Kevin journeyed to the upper realm to finally become a master, but soon found he had lost his levels, his satchel of herbs, and his night dagger. Desperate to regain all his abilities, Kevin set off into the sea of possibilities to face challenges that would return his many gifts in time to save the upper realm from a looming threat. Kevin recovered his night dagger and his satchel of herbs, but needed to get back to the ivory tower and heal Alohi, a wise sage who had directed him to the Sea of Possibility, in order to learn what the next step of his journey would be. Kevin rushed onto the beach of the remote island and called out toward the blackened sea ahead. "Whale! Whale, are you out there? I need your help." Nothing could be seen. Realizing he would have to connect with the creature in a different way, Kevin closed his eyes and focused, doing his best to connect telekinetically with the massive creature. Just then, the sound of a mighty blowhole pushing air and water nearby caused Kevin to open his eyes. The glowing whale, its majestic form shimmering in the celestial waters, seemed to respond to the urgency in Kevin's aura. The colossal creature surfaced gracefully, its eyes reflecting a profound intelligence. Kevin felt a connection with the whale, an unspoken understanding that transcended the bounds of language. In the upper realm, where cosmic energies flowed freely, communication took on a unique form, a silent exchange of thoughts and emotions. The whale regarded Kevin with a serene gaze, acknowledging the human's presence. Kevin, holding the replenished satchel of herbs, conveyed his gratitude for the penguin's guidance and shared his continued quest to regain his levels. The whale, with its vast wisdom, seemed to sense the importance of Kevin's journey. As Kevin focused on connecting with the massive creature, the whale responded to his call, their minds synchronized in a silent dance of understanding. "Friend," Kevin thought toward the whale, "I need to get back to the upper realm. I have my satchel and can help Alohi. Can you take me there?" The whale, its consciousness echoing with ancient wisdom, acknowledged Kevin's plea. In a majestic display of grace, the creature opened its mouth wide. Kevin, trusting the being, swam towards the cavernous entrance, feeling a surreal sense of safety within the whale's embrace. As he reached the opening, the whale's mouth closed gently around him, enveloping Kevin in a protective cocoon. Inside the whale's colossal form, Kevin found himself once again in a vast, serene chamber illuminated by a soft glow. The whale's interior was a realm of tranquility, a sanctuary that transcended the boundaries of earthly understanding. Kevin marveled at the surreal beauty of his surroundings as the whale began to swim, traversing the currents that connected the world of water and land. After a time, Kevin could feel the whale slow to a stop. Its mouth reopened, revealing the ivory tower. Kevin was back in the upper realm. As Kevin swam to shore, a profound sense of gratitude filled his heart. Turning to face the majestic whale that had carried him across the seas, Kevin offered a silent expression of thanks. "Thank you, my friend," Kevin thought, extending his gratitude to the benevolent creature that had become his ally. The whale, bathed in radiant energy, acknowledged Kevin with a gentle nod before gracefully diving back into the depths of the Sea of Possibilities. Kevin focused on the task at hand. He had to get back inside the ivory tower and help Alohi. The last time Kevin had seen Alohi, she had fallen unconscious, and Kevin couldn't help, but now he had a satchel of herbs. Kevin made his way toward the fallen drawbridge extending out from the ivory tower when he suddenly spotted something new. It was Jonah, Kevin's friend who had been with him for most of his journey through the upper realm. "Jonah!" Kevin called out. Jonah did not reply. Instead, Jonah's gaze was fixed on the delicate butterflies, and he seemed lost in a moment of profound connection with the upper realm's natural wonders. "Jonah!" Kevin called again, louder than before. Jonah continued to stare at all the pretty glowing butterflies. Concern etched across Kevin's face as he shook Jonah, hoping to break the enchantment that held him captive to the butterfly's allure. Jonah's gaze remained fixed on the ethereal insects, and it was evident that something profound had taken hold of his senses. Kevin understood what was happening. Everyone in the upper realm had slowly turned into a calm, happy, but somehow lifeless being, and Kevin feared that Jonah was now the same. Jonah, too, may have been lost to the serene tranquility of the upper realm. "Jonah, snap out of it!" Kevin urged, his voice echoing in the air. He pondered the possibility that the tranquility of the upper realm had affected Jonah differently, leaving him entranced in a perpetual state of serenity. Unable to rouse Jonah from his trance, Kevin took a different approach. He reached into his replenished satchel and withdrew a small vial containing an overly fragrant herbal concoction. "This is onion tongue," Kevin noted. "Its stench packs quite a wallop." Kevin placed the vial beneath Jonah's nose and opened it. The strong smell cut through the dreamlike state Jonah had found himself in. Kevin gently waved the scent towards Jonah, hoping to reawaken his companion's senses. Jonah snapped back to reality, pushing away from the vial. He looked around. "What? What happened?" "You were staring at butterflies again," Kevin offered. Jonah's expression sank. "It's getting worse. Who knows how much longer I have till I become like everyone else?" "That's not going to happen," Kevin replied. "I have my dagger in my satchel. Now let's go help Elohi and get some real answers." With newfound determination and a sense of urgency, Kevin and Jonah approached the daunting moat surrounding the ivory tower. The shimmering waters below held secrets and challenges, but their purpose propelled them forward. Jonah, ever graceful, leapt with elegance, effortlessly crossing the moat in a single bound. As Kevin observed Jonah's agile maneuver, a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. Would he be able to match Jonah's finesse? The previous attempt had been a close call, but this time, something felt different. A surge of determination coursed through Kevin's veins as he gathered his strength. With a deep breath, Kevin took a running start and leapt across the moat. To his surprise and satisfaction, he felt a newfound strength and agility, smoothly gliding through the air. The other side of the moat greeted him with solid ground, marking a subtle yet tangible improvement in his capabilities. A spark of realization lit up Kevin's eyes. Perhaps the experiences in the upper realm, the encounters with the whale, and the healing of the penguin had suddenly enhanced his abilities. In the serene atmosphere of the ivory tower, Kevin and Jonah discovered Elohi still lying unconscious. Determination etched across Kevin's face. He opened his satchel, its contents now replenished with powerful herbs from the remote island and otherworldly elements. "We have to help her," Kevin noted as he checked Elohi's pulse and breathing. Jonah watched as Kevin meticulously began crafting an herbal remedy to revive Elohi. "I'm trying to give her immune system a boost, but it's still missing something," Kevin explained as his eyes scanned the room, searching for the elusive element that would bring the remedy to its potential. Unexpectedly, Kevin's gaze fell upon his white dockers, and he noticed a small penguin feather caught on the fabric. A spark of recognition ignited in Kevin's mind, reminding him of the penguin he had healed on the tropical island. With a swift and intuitive decision, he plucked the feather and added it to the herbal mixture. "Thank you, penguin pal," Kevin whispered to himself as he combined the ingredients. The feather infused the remedy with an aquatic quality, enhancing its potency. As Kevin completed the concoction, he approached Elohi with a sense of purpose. Gently applying the herbal remedy, he whispered words of encouragement, urging her to return from the depths of unconsciousness. The room seemed to hold its breath as Kevin's efforts took effect. Elohi's eyes fluttered open, and a soft, serene glow returned to her countenance. She looked at Kevin with gratitude, recognizing the dedication and resourcefulness he had displayed. In that moment, Kevin, Jonah, and Elohi shared a silent acknowledgement of the intricate connections that bound them in the mystical tapestry of the upper realm. "I see you've got your satchel back," Elohi noted as she climbed back to her feet. "Yes," Kevin replied, "and my dagger is in my possession again, too." "Well done, Kevin Williams," Elohi offered with a warm smile. "The Night King and I knew you would find your way." However, the urgency in Elohi's expression quickly resurfaced. "But there's no time to linger in celebration. The harmony of the upper realm remains at risk and your journey has just begun. The interloper remains in the upper realm and we need you to defeat that person." Kevin nodded. "I'll do whatever is necessary, but I still don't have my levels." Elohi considered Kevin for a moment. "The upper realm removes your heightened skills the moment you arrive, so that you don't feel the urge to use them as a crutch while trying to obtain the level of master. But the situation is dire. Time is running out. I shall allow you to reacquire your skills, Kevin Williams. But I can't just hand them to you." "What do I have to do?" Kevin inquired. "I'll tell you. But know this, Kevin Williams. The next part of your journey could be your last." Kevin returned to the upper realm and the ivory tower thanks to the help of his whale friend. There, he revives Elohi, the sage gatekeeper of the realm, with an herbal potion, and she relates that it was inevitable that wise and valiant Kevin would begin to overturn the chaos in the upper realm. But Kevin fears he cannot do that without his levels. Elohi told Kevin that he could reclaim all of his depleted skills, but he would first have to complete one final challenge. Elohi stared out the window of the ivory tower as Kevin approached. "What do I need to do to get my levels back?" Kevin inquired humbly. "Seek the highest point," Elohi responded cryptically. "Only there can you recover your hidden skills and fulfill your potential and achieve your destiny." Kevin's gaze followed Elohi's, and his eyes settled on a majestic mountain shrouded in clouds in the distance, its summit reaching into the heavens. A sense of recognition dawned on Kevin. The image was reminiscent of the mysterious sketch that had materialized on the blank sheet of parchment Kevin had received after the epic clash. The same parchment that eventually led Kevin to the upper realm in the first place. "That image," Kevin whispered. "The cloud reaching into the mountains. I've seen it before. I understand. That's where I need to go." As Kevin descended from the ivory tower, Jonah joined him, his demeanor still slightly dreamy but determined. As Kevin and Jonah leapt over the moat and made their way toward the mountain in the distance, a sense of purpose emanated from Kevin. However, Jonah's demeanor seemed uneasy, a cloud of uncertainty lingering over him. "Kevin," Jonah hesitated, "I'm scared. I want to help you. I want to save the upper realm, but I can feel it. The serenity, the calmness that's enveloping everyone here. I don't want to become like them, a mindless, simple blank of a human being." Kevin understood Jonah's apprehension. The upper realm's pervasive tranquility had affected many, leaving them in a state of serene bliss but devoid of ambition or individuality. Kevin placed a reassuring hand on Jonah's shoulder. "Jonah, you've got something special. You're still you, and I won't let you lose that. We'll figure this out together, all right?" Kevin spoke with determination, his eyes reflecting a promise to safeguard Jonah from the pervasive influence of the upper realm. Jonah nodded, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. As they resumed their journey, Kevin remained vigilant, keeping a watchful eye on Jonah to ensure that the enchantment of the upper realm didn't erode the essence of his friend for good. The mountain loomed ahead, a distant silhouette against the ethereal backdrop. Kevin forged ahead, motivated by the need to regain his levels and the resolve to protect Jonah from the unintended consequences of the upper realm's seductive tranquility. The quest for balance and restoration had just begun, and Kevin was determined to navigate the challenges that lay ahead, with Jonah by his side. After a long journey, Kevin and Jonah now stood before the grim spectacle of a once pristine mountain pass now marred by decay. The glowing flowers, once vibrant and radiant, now wilted and crumbling. The rocks, once adorned with mossy beauty, were now slimy and repulsive. It was an unsettling sight, a stark departure from the lush and enchanting beauty of the upper realm. Jonah voiced the disquiet that both of them felt. "This is wrong," he muttered, his brows furrowed in concern. "I've never seen anything but endless beauty here. What's happening to this Eden?" Kevin, too, felt the weight of the change in the air. It's like the very essence of this place is being poisoned. As they pressed forward, the stark evidence of pollution became apparent. Trash scattered across the ethereal landscape, an aberration in the pristine realm they once knew. Kevin bent down to examine a discarded object, his face a mask of disbelief. "Pollution in the upper realm?" Kevin exclaimed. Surprise and a bit of anger were etched on his face. This place was supposed to be untouched by the vices of the world below. Pushing onward, the duo encountered a sheer rock face blocking their path. Kevin examined the obstacle. "We'll have to climb it," Kevin declared. Kevin, devoid of his usual skills, surveyed the steep ascent of the mountain. The challenge ahead seemed more formidable without his levels to guide him. "How am I going to climb this without my skills?" he pondered aloud. Jonah, however, appeared to be slipping back into a state of distraction. His eyes glazed over, captivated by something unseen. Frustration crept into Kevin's voice as he called out, "Jonah, snap out of it. We can't afford to lose focus here." Shaking Jonah vigorously, Kevin hoped to break the trance that seemed to be tightening its grip on his companion. With a start, Jonah blinked rapidly, as if emerging from a deep and consuming dream. "I'm sorry, Kevin. It's like I'm being drawn away," he confessed, a hint of fear in his eyes. Kevin, understanding the gravity of their situation, placed a reassuring hand on Jonah's shoulder. "Stay with me, Jonah. We have to navigate this together. The upper realm is counting on us." As they resumed their ascent, Kevin tried to devise a makeshift plan for climbing without his usual skills. Every step felt uncertain, and the climb became a test of sheer determination. Jonah, seemingly back on track, followed Kevin's lead, their synchronized movements echoing a sense of shared purpose. The air grew thinner as they climbed higher, the challenge accentuated by the tainted landscape around them. With perseverance and mutual support, Kevin and Jonah continued their climb, determined to reach the summit despite the odds. The journey was a stark reminder of their vulnerability, but the quest to restore the upper realm's equilibrium pressed on, a beacon of hope amidst the shadows that clung to the once pristine landscape. As they neared the summit, the conversation shifted to the origins of the natural deterioration that they were seeing all around them on the mountain. "Do you think it's connected to the interloper?" Jonah asked, his mind racing with possibilities. Kevin, his gaze fixed on the troubled landscape, nodded solemnly. "It has to be. Something is disrupting the harmony of the upper realm. We need to find it and put an end to this nightmare." The wind whispered eerie secrets as they climbed higher, chilling backdrop to the unfolding mystery. The summit awaited, and with it the answers that would guide Kevin and Jonah through the unsettling revelations about the upper realm's newfound affliction. Concern etched on his face, Kevin observed Jonah struggle with the climb. The more they climbed, the more Jonah seemed distracted. Kevin knew they needed a solution. Swiftly retrieving his replenished satchel, Kevin pulled out 2 gleaming power pills. "Jonah, take one of these. It'll keep your mind sharp for hours. We need to be at our best for what lies ahead." Jonah, initially hesitant, accepted the offered pill, and Kevin quickly popped the other into his own mouth. Almost instantly, a surge of energy pulsed through their bodies. The world around them seemed sharper, colors more vivid, and the daunting climb ahead appeared more conquerable. As the effects of the power pills took hold, Kevin could feel his strength returning, compensating for the absence of his usual skills. He glanced at Jonah, who seemed revitalized, his focus and determination reignited. "Let's press on, Jonah," Kevin urged, his voice resonating with newfound vigor. Together, fueled by the temporary boost from the power pills, they resumed their trek upward. The climb became more fluid, and obstacles that once appeared insurmountable became mere challenges. The landscape, despite its degradation, became a backdrop to their determined climb. Kevin and Jonah moved with synchronized grace, the power pills helping them to defy the odds. The air, now charged with renewed vitality, carried the echoes of their footsteps as they ascended the mountain. With every step, the power pills continued to infuse them with strength, offering a temporary reprieve from the challenges of the climb. As they neared the summit, a sense of accomplishment mingled with the heightened awareness bestowed by the pills. The air crackled with energy as Kevin and Jonah, supercharged by the power pills, skillfully navigated the sheer rock face. Their fingers and toes found solid grips on the tiniest ledges, and agile as mountain goats, they ascended the challenging terrain. As they climbed, pebbles began to rain down on them, catching Kevin's attention. He looked up, squinting against the bright upper realm light, and glimpsed a shimmering shadowy figure at the mountain's peak. The identity remained elusive, hidden in the radiant glow. "Who is that?" Kevin inquired. "I don't know," Jonah replied. Before Kevin could decipher the enigmatic presence above, the tranquility shattered. A thunderous rumble echoed through the mountainside, and a cascade of rocks broke loose from the summit, hurtling down toward Kevin and Jonah like an unstoppable force of nature. "It's a rock slide," Kevin called out. As the rocks thundered down, Kevin spared a glance upward, catching another glimpse of the shadowy figure. There was a strange familiarity in its silhouette, but the urgency of the moment demanded their undivided attention. Kevin turned to Jonah and called out, "No matter what happens, we can't lose our grip. If we let go of the mountain, we'll die." With the help of his new friend Jonah, Kevin headed to the highest point in the upper realm, where he was told by Elohi, the gatekeeper of the realm, that he could finally restore his impressive set of levels and skills. But as Kevin and Jonah climbed, a shadowy figure unleashed a flurry of rocks from above. Kevin and Jonah gripped the side of the mountain as a rock slide commenced, sending a cascade of boulders hurtling down the steep incline at the two men. Kevin and Jonah were battered by the torrent of stones, but summoned every ounce of strength to cling to their precarious ledges. "Down! We have to climb down fast!" Kevin's voice carried over the onslaught of stones, the urgency evident in his strained tones. Rocks pelted them from all directions, and both men maneuvered to descend the treacherous terrain as quickly as possible. As they descended, rocks struck them with relentless force. In the chaos, Jonah took a direct hit to the head, a sharp blow that caused him to release his grip. Kevin, acting on instinct, reached out with one arm, grabbing Jonah to prevent him from plummeting to his death. Kevin held onto the ledge with one hand and Jonah with the other. The strain was palpable and Kevin's strength tested beyond its limits. "Hold on, Jonah. I've got you." Kevin gritted his teeth, determination etched on his face as he fought against the downward pull. But the relentless barrage of rocks, combined with the weight of Jonah and the strain on Kevin's own body, proved too much. Kevin's grip faltered and both men slipped from the precarious ledge. They tumbled downward, enveloped by the chaos of the rock slide. As Kevin and Jonah descended in a chaotic freefall, the mountain's jagged contours seemed to conspire against them. Jonah, bearing the brunt of the fall, struck the ground with a thud, his consciousness fading into the shadows of unconsciousness. "Jonah!" Kevin shouted with grave concern. Adrenaline coursing through his veins, Kevin swiftly reached for his satchel, retrieving the familiar herbs and concoctions he had used to revive Elohi in the ivory tower. Kneeling beside Jonah, Kevin worked with practiced efficiency, applying the herbal mix to revive his fallen companion. The potent blend of celestial herbs, a testament to Kevin's herbal expertise, gradually roused Jonah from his unconscious state. Blinking against the disorientation, Jonah gazed up at Kevin with gratitude mixed with lingering pain. "Easy there, Jonah. We took a nasty tumble," Kevin advised, helping Jonah to a sitting position. What do we do now?" Jonah asked. "We can't go back up the same way. It's too dangerous." "We need to find another way around the mountain. Going back up is not an option with someone up there trying to turn us into human bowling pins." The gravity of their situation weighed on Kevin as he surveyed the rugged landscape. The mountain loomed above, its formidable presence a reminder of the challenges ahead. "We'll have to take the long way around. It might take more time, but it's better than risking another rock slide." Jonah nodded in agreement as Kevin helped him back on his feet. With a renewed sense of determination, Kevin and Jonah embarked on the arduous journey around the mountain. Kevin knew that though the journey would take longer, it was a safer route. The elusive figure who had unleashed a rock slide to try to halt their ascent would, Kevin hoped, think that they had been flung from the mountain into their deaths. The second route would surely be a surprise to Kevin's new enemy. Turning a corner, Kevin and Jonah encountered an unexpected obstacle, an expansive bluff covered in gooey, wet, soggy mud. The once pristine upper realm, now marred by pockets of decay and disarray, revealed itself in the uncharacteristic muck beneath their feet. Kevin eyed the muddy terrain with a furrowed brow, contemplating their options. "Looks like we've got ourselves a messy detour. We'll have to tread lightly. There's no telling how deep this mud could be. We don't want to get stuck." Jonah, still rubbing his head from the earlier fall, surveyed the slippery ground with a mix of wariness and curiosity. What do you think caused this? Is it more of the weirdness spreading through the upper realm? Could be, Kevin replied. We've seen enough strange events already. Let's try to cross without getting bogged down. I don't want to find out what happens if we get stuck in this muck. As they gingerly stepped onto the muddy terrain, the ground squelched beneath their feet, and the once pristine image of the upper realm continued to unravel. With each step, Kevin and Jonah navigated the treacherous landscape, their eyes trained for signs of further abnormalities in this previously idyllic realm. The promising shortcut through the gooey mud became increasingly challenging for Kevin and Jonah. The terrain seemed to resist their every step, pulling at their feet with a hidden force. Frustration etched across Kevin's face as the difficulties mounted. "This is ridiculous," Kevin grumbled, attempting to lift his foot from the clinging mud. "It's like quicksand or something." Jonah, his memory jogging to a lesson from the upper realm, wore a solemn expression. "I remember now. These are the swamps of sadness. It consumes those who lack faith in themselves. We need to believe in our abilities or we won't make it through." Kevin's eyes widened at the revelation. Believe in ourselves? That doesn't make any sense. Just then, Kevin sank deeper into the mud. Jonah was right. Kevin took a deep breath, mentally preparing for the challenge ahead. He did his best to stay positive. "All right. If that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do. No problem. We've got this." Both men focused on the belief that they could overcome the obstacles before them. With newfound determination, they attempted to move forward. As they stepped with purpose and conviction, the resistance lessened, and the mud seemed to lose its grip on their feet and legs. "Keep going," Kevin urged, a renewed energy in his voice. "Believe that we can make it through this. The swamps of sadness won't defeat us." Step by step, their faith in themselves acting as an invisible shield, Kevin and Jonah traversed the treacherous swamp. Kevin's heart pounded as he witnessed Jonah sinking deeper into the clinging mud. Desperation etched across Jonah's face. He cried out for help, his voice a mixture of fear and defeat. "Kevin," Jonah cried. "Kevin, help! I can't do it! I'm sinking!" "Jonah, you've got to stop doubting yourself," Kevin called out, rushing back towards his friend. "Believe in your strength and your ability to overcome. We can't let the swamps of sadness consume you." "I don't know, Kevin. I can feel it. My mind's slipping away. What if I become like the others?" Jonah's eyes reflected the terror of losing himself to the pervasive serenity that had affected so many in the upper realm. Kevin reached out, grabbing Jonah's outstretched hand. "You're not like the others, Jonah. You're still here, fighting. Remember your purpose and your goals. We'll face this together, and you won't lose yourself." Jonah, his struggles evident, made a concerted effort to believe in his own strength. The mud, sensing the change in his mindset, released its grip slightly. Kevin pulled Jonah with all his might, encouraging him every step of the way. "You can do this, Jonah. Remember who you are and what you aspire to become. Don't let doubt control you," Kevin urged. With a final surge of determination, Jonah managed to break free from the sinking mud. Both men stumbled onto firmer ground, panting but resolute. The swamps of sadness had tested them, and they had emerged stronger for it. "Thank you, Kevin. I almost lost myself there," Jonah admitted, wiping mud from his face. "We're in this together, Jonah. We'll face whatever comes our way, and we'll make it through." Together they had conquered doubt and emerged stronger, their bond deepening amidst the challenges of the upper realm. As they stepped onto solid ground, the glow of the mountain in the distance beckoning, Kevin and Jonah shared a triumphant moment. The journey ahead might be fraught with uncertainties, but their victory over the swamps of sadness affirmed their resilience and the power of belief. The men continued their ascent up the mountain. As they turned the next corner, Kevin and Jonah found themselves face to face with colossal, otherworldly statues, each armed with fantastical weaponry that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. The monolithic figures, though inanimate, emanated an aura of hostility, trapping the two men in an eerie confrontation. The statues stood like sentinels, their stone faces giving away nothing. Jonah surveyed the scene with apprehension. "What do we do, Kevin? They seem ready to attack." Jonah muttered, his gaze fixed on the frightening foes. Kevin, recalling the lessons of the upper realm and the challenges he had faced so far, prepared for the worst. His hands balled into fists as he turned back to Jonah. "What do we do? The only thing we can do, my friend. We fight." With the help of his new friend Jonah, Kevin headed towards the highest point in the upper realm, where he was told he could finally restore his skills and save the upper realm from certain doom. But as Kevin and Jonah trekked up the winding mountain trail, they came upon 2 stone monsters blocking their ascent. Kevin didn't have his levels, but he knew he had no other options. He would have to fight. Kevin and Jonah took in the monstrous stone guards blocking their path. This was going to be hard. Kevin didn't have his levels, but he couldn't let that stop him. He stepped forward and did his best to seem confident against the towering monsters. "Let us pass," Kevin ordered, "or face the consequences." Kevin pulled out his night dagger and prepared to fight, but to his surprise, the stone creature standing in front of him didn't attack. Instead, they smiled. Their colossal forms, once perceived as menacing, now exuded an air of childlike enthusiasm. "Hey there, travelers," the lead monster exclaimed. "It's great to see you. It's great to see anybody. It's been ages since anyone came up the mountain." "We were getting so bored," the second monster added in a surprisingly friendly tone. Kevin, still in a defensive stance, exchanged a puzzled look with Jonah. It seemed these creatures were not the adversaries they had anticipated. Kevin lowered his dagger and tried a gentler approach. "In that case, greetings. It's nice to see you too. My name is Kevin Williams. This is my new friend Jonah. We're on a mission to reach the highest point of the upper realm. Can you let us pass?" The monsters exchanged amused glances, seemingly entertained by the situation. Well, you want to reach the summit, do you?" The lead monster laughed. "That's wonderful to hear. Most folks are content staying in the more serene parts of the upper realm." The monster guard's demeanor suddenly shifted from playful to imposing. The lead monster, who moments ago had displayed a friendly disposition, now spoke with an ominous tone. "Only those who are worthy can pass. If you try to pass and you are not worthy, we will be forced to destroy you." Kevin and Jonah exchanged a look. "How do we know if we're worthy?" Jonah asked. The lead guard repeated, "Only those who are worthy can pass. If you are not worthy and try to pass, we will destroy you." The monstrous guards split into 2 rows, creating a narrow path between them. Each creature brandished formidable weapons, their intent clear. Only those worthy would be permitted to pass unscathed. Kevin and Jonah again exchanged uneasy glances, uncertain about the criteria for proving their worthiness. Nevertheless, driven by their mission to reach the highest point of the upper realm, they steeled themselves for the impending trial. "It's a test," Kevin offered. "I think we have to decide that we're worthy. We do that and we can walk through without incident." "I don't know, Kevin," Jonah countered. "What if you're wrong?" "No," Kevin replied with a firm and confident voice that was a perfect reflection of his inner resolve. "Don't say that. You have to believe that you're worthy or you're already doomed. Here, I'll go first. Just follow my lead. You're worthy. We're worthy." Taking a deep breath, Kevin stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. The monsters' gazes bore into them, assessing every move, every intention. As Kevin advanced, the monsters held their ground, ready to unleash their formidable arsenal at the slightest sign of unworthiness. Jonah followed suit, matching Kevin's determined stride. The tension in the air escalated and the monsters' eyes flickered with an intensity that belied their earlier friendliness. Step by step, the duo made their way through the narrow passage that throbbed with an aura of danger. The monsters' weapons crackled with energy, poised to strike at the first hint of unworthiness. The path seemed endless, each step a silent challenge, and the monsters' scrutiny intensified. As they continued through, Kevin's mind wandered as he began to question his worthiness. His thoughts drifted to memories of his past trials in the upper realm. He recalled facing the Night King to reclaim his dagger and healing his penguin friend in order to recover his satchel of herbs. Kevin prevailed through every challenge despite the absence of his levels. Each victorious moment became a testament to his inner strength. "I've been through so much here without relying on the familiar tools," Kevin mused to himself. "I faced the unknown and conquered it. I can do this. I'm worthy." Meanwhile, Jonah struggled with his own doubts. The encounter with the swamps of sadness lingered in his mind, creating shadows of uncertainty. The fear of becoming one of the mindless beings in the upper realm haunted him as well. Kevin noticed Jonah struggle and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Jonah, you're a master of your craft. You're a ballet dancer. Your skills are unique and powerful. Don't let doubt consume you. Believe in yourself just like you did back in the swamp." Jonah took a deep breath, trying to dispel the lingering unease. "You're right, Kevin. I've faced challenges before and I'll face them again. I won't let fear control me." Kevin's heart swelled with pride as he successfully passed the guards, proving his worthiness to continue the ascent. He turned, expecting to see Jonah following suit, but instead found his friend paralyzed by the echoes of past insecurities. Jonah's self-doubt had manifested, threatening to hold him captive. "Jonah, you've got this. Remember all the times you've amazed me with your skills. Your strength lies in your uniqueness, and that's what makes you a true master," Kevin urged, his words cutting through the fog of Jonah's hesitation. Jonah's eyes reflected the vulnerability of his past, the scars of childhood bullying, and the lingering fear that had clung to him. But Kevin wasn't about to let his friend succumb to those shadows. He approached Jonah, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "You helped me navigate challenges that seemed insurmountable. Without you, I wouldn't have come this far. You're an integral part of our journey, and I believe in you. Now it's time for you to believe in yourself," Kevin declared with unwavering confidence. Jonah took a deep breath, attempting to shake off the weight of doubt. Kevin's words resonated within him, sparking a flicker of determination. He looked into Kevin's eyes, finding a wellspring of support in true, unique friendship. "Thanks, Kevin. I needed that," Jonah whispered, grateful for the encouragement. With newfound resolve, Jonah focused on the monumental task ahead. He envisioned the graceful leaps and pirouettes that defined his identity as a master dancer. The monster, sensing the transformation within Jonah, observed silently as the dancer prepared to confront his deepest fears. In a burst of strength and artistry, Jonah propelled himself forward, executing a series of elegant maneuvers that left the monsters in awe. The guards, initially rigid and imposing, now bowed in acknowledgement of Jonah's newfound confidence. Kevin grinned, proud of his friend's resilience. Together, they pressed onward, ascending the mystical mountain with a shared determination that transcended the physical challenges before them. Kevin and Jonah had done it. They believed in themselves and had gotten past the monstrous stone guards. Fueled with renewed excitement, Kevin and Jonah raced forward. As they came around the next bend of the mountain, Kevin and Jonah spotted the next obstacle in their journey. An imposing lead door loomed before them, a formidable barrier standing between Kevin, Jonah, and the mysterious revelations that awaited at the peak of the mountain. Kevin, fueled by newfound confidence and the echoes of past triumphs, approached the colossal obstacle with determination. "Stand back, Jonah. It's time to put my growing strength to the test," Kevin declared, summoning the inherent natural power that surged within him. With a focused gaze and unwavering resolve, Kevin harnessed the force within his being and directed it toward the lead door. His muscles rippled with exertion as he pressed against the unyielding surface. The door, a testament to the challenges posed by the upper realm, resisted at first, its weight imposing a formidable resistance. However, Kevin's determination fueled an internal fire, and with a mighty roar, he summoned the strength to overcome the obstacle. The lead door groaned under the force of Kevin's assault, and cracks began to spiderweb across its surface. Inch by inch, Kevin exerted his will, pushing the boundaries of his physical and metaphysical strength. Jonah watched in awe as Kevin, once an ordinary man navigating the complexities of the upper realm, transformed into a force to be reckoned with. The door, a symbol of the trials that guarded the path to mastery, finally succumbed to Kevin's relentless onslaught. With a resounding crash, it gave way, revealing the passage beyond. "Well done, Kevin," Jonah cheered, admiration shining in his eyes. Kevin, catching his breath but invigorated by the accomplishment, grinned at Jonah. "We're almost to the top, my friend. Now let's go finish this." Kevin and Jonah trekked up the winding mountain trail, pushed through the swamps of sadness, and passed between two stone guards before reaching a large steel door, blocking their path. Realizing they were close to the top, Kevin and Jonah pushed through the door and prepared for whatever challenge might come next. Kevin and Jonah, still reeling from their encounter with the monstrous stone guards, hurriedly approached the massive lead door that stood before them. With determined resolve, they pushed against its weight, the door bursting open to reveal the path that lay beyond. "We're through the barrier," Kevin shouted excitedly. "Come on, Jonah, we're almost to the top." As the duo pressed forward, anticipation built with every step. They were getting closer and closer to the top of the mountain. They were getting closer and closer to their goals. However, to their utter astonishment, the scene that unfolded before their eyes left them bewildered and disoriented. Instead of progressing higher, Kevin and Jonah found themselves standing at the base of the mountain once again. The familiar sights of the towering cliffs and sprawling landscape greeted them, casting a perplexing shadow over their understanding of the journey. Kevin furrowed his brow, the puzzle of their surroundings gnawing at the edges of his consciousness. "What the? We're back at the beginning." "But how is that possible?" Jonah inquired. "We just came through that door, and now we're back at the bottom of the mountain. That doesn't make sense." Jonah's gaze shifted around the landscape before them. "Is this some kind of trick?" "It must be another test," Kevin offered. "Maybe we're meant to prove ourselves all over again." "That can't be it," Jonah complained. "Let's just go back to the door and see if there's another way." With a sense of urgency, Kevin and Jonah retraced their steps, turning back to the path that they had just traversed. However, to their growing dismay, the once familiar route no longer led to the massive lead door. The landscape seemed to have rearranged itself, leaving them in a state of disorientation. "It's gone," Jonah noted. "The door is gone." "I guess that means we only have one choice," Kevin added. "We have to do everything all over again, and fast." Jonah's expression sank. Kevin did his best to lift his friend's spirits. "We bested the mountain once, we can do it again," Kevin declared, a steely determination in his voice. "Let's go." With renewed purpose, the duo set out once more, retracing the steps they had taken before. The journey up the mountain repeated like a haunting refrain, and Kevin and Jonah found themselves once again facing the muddy swamps of sadness. This time, however, a newfound sense of familiarity enveloped them. Jonah, with a hint of optimism, remarked, "This isn't so bad. We already did this once, so we know all the tricks. This is easy." Kevin's heart grew as he saw that their journey had already instilled in Jonah a confidence that he lacked when they embarked upon their first trek up the mountain. The duo navigated the swamp with more confidence, their steps purposeful and determined. With the memory of their previous encounter, they avoided the pitfalls of doubt that had threatened to engulf them before. The swamp, though still a formidable challenge, seemed to yield more easily to their resolute strides. Having traversed the swamps with greater ease, Kevin and Jonah ascended the mountain once again. The monstrous stone guards, though imposing, no longer instilled the same fear in the travelers. Kevin's mind was a wellspring of strategy, and Jonah, emboldened by their previous encounter, faced the guards with newfound assurance. "We've got this," Kevin assured Jonah, and together they confronted the stone guards with a blend of confidence and resourcefulness. The guards, once menacing, now served as mere gatekeepers in a familiar dance. As they approached the massive lead doors once more, the echoes of their footsteps reverberated through the passage. With a synchronized effort, Kevin and Jonah pushed against the door, unveiling the path ahead. "We did it!" Kevin exclaimed. "We made it through for a second time. Now let's get to the top of the mountain." Kevin and Jonah made their way around the bend once again, and to their horror, they found themselves back at the base of the mountain again. "No," Kevin whispered ominously. The disheartening realization that they had once again returned to the base of the mountain hung heavy in the air. Jonah's optimism waned, and a shadow of frustration crept across his face. "It's a loop. Every time we burst through the door, we start back at the beginning. It's impossible. We'll never make it to the top." Kevin, though momentarily taken aback, refused to give in to despair. He pondered the situation, his mind churning with the puzzle that lay before them. "There must be a pattern, a clue we're missing," he mused aloud, his eyes scanning the surroundings as if searching for an elusive answer. Jonah, still grappling with the apparent futility of their efforts, leaned against the stone wall. "This feels like an endless maze. How do we break free from it?" "Maybe it's not about reaching the top all at once," Kevin suggested, a glimmer of a plan forming in his mind. "Maybe each attempt teaches us something new. We adapt, learn, and grow with each loop. Eventually, we'll navigate this maze with a mastery that breaks the cycle." Jonah's eyes brightened with a spark of hope, and he nodded in agreement. "So we keep going, learn from each repetition, and inch our way forward. It's a journey of persistence." With a renewed determination, Kevin and Jonah set forth once again. The mountain, though presenting an enigmatic challenge, became a canvas for their evolving strategy. Each loop, rather than a setback, was a stepping stone toward unraveling the mysteries that shrouded the upper reaches of the realm. The journey, it seemed, was not just about reaching the summit, but about evolving through the cycles of repetition. The mountain, a stoic guardian, awaited their persistent endeavor to break free from the looping labyrinth and ascend to the top. After multiple loops, the repetitive cycle began to wear on both Kevin and Jonah. Climbing the mountain, navigating the swamps of sadness, confronting the stone guards, and bursting through the door had become an exhausting routine. As they stood before the massive door for what felt like the 100th time, fatigue and frustration crept into their spirits. "This is never going to work," Jonah complained, voicing the shared sentiment that lingered in the air. Kevin, too, felt the weight of the seemingly unending loop pressing down on them. Yet, despite the weariness, a flicker of determination burned in his eyes. "We can't give up now. There has to be a way. A breakthrough we haven't discovered yet." With a deep breath, they pushed through the door once again. As they traversed the familiar terrain, a sense of déjà vu accompanied every step. The swamps of sadness seemed more oppressive, the stone guards more imposing, and the door more foreboding. However, the subtle shifts in their approach started to reveal patterns and nuances that had eluded them before. "We've been here before," Kevin acknowledged, "but every cycle, every repetition teaches us something new. We're not the same as we were in the beginning. Let's observe, adapt, and find the key to breaking the cycle." Jonah, though still skeptical, nodded in agreement. "Fine, but if this doesn't work, I'm not sure how much longer I can keep going." As Kevin and Jonah faced the looming door once again, Jonah's frustration turned into a question. "This is pointless. When can we give up?" In response, Kevin contemplated their journey. "I think it's been a test the whole time, a test of will. It wants us to quit. It wants us to give up." Jonah, looking both weary and resolute, asked, "So what do we do?" Kevin considered the situation carefully. "We just keep going, forever. We refuse to give up no matter how many times it loops us back to the beginning. Do we agree?" Jonah extended his hand and they shook on it. "We never stop. We fight until we succeed or die trying." With their pact sealed, they gathered their resolve and burst through the door once more. This time, however, there was a shift in the air. The door didn't cycle them back to the base of the mountains. Instead, they found themselves on the other side, higher up the mountain than before. The perpetual loop had finally relented, acknowledging their unyielding determination. They stood there, taking in the realization that they had broken free from the cycle. The mountain stretched above them, presenting new challenges and heights to conquer. The victory was not just in reaching a higher elevation, but in the tenacity that had carried them through the endless repetitions. The journey continued, but now with a newfound understanding, their will to persevere had transformed the seemingly insurmountable into a conquerable path. The mountain, once an enigmatic adversary, now lay ahead, inviting them to ascend further into the mysteries of the upper realm. With the help of his new friend Jonah, Kevin headed towards the highest point in the upper realm, where he was told he could restore his skills and save the upper realm from a looming threat. As they headed up the mountain, Kevin and Jonah faced many challenges that tested their will, but they had come out of each victorious. After passing their most recent test, a door that reset their journey over and over again, Kevin and Jonah were finally on their way once again and close to the top of the mountain. "We made it through the loop," Kevin exclaimed. "We're almost to the top, Jonah. Let's go." As Kevin and Jonah continued their ascent, Kevin felt a subtle but profound change within himself. There was in him a surge of energy, a renewed sense of purpose, and an awakening of skills he thought were lost. These signs hinted at the return of his levels. A whisper of certainty tickled his thought, suggesting that he was regaining his strength. In the midst of this transformation, Kevin couldn't help but wonder about Elohim's guidance. Was this quest to reach the top of the highest mountain in the upper realm nothing more than just a setup for me to slowly build my levels back? Kevin mused. A sense of gratitude and determination filled Kevin's heart. He was on the right track, and the challenges he and Jonah had faced were more than just obstacles. They were stepping stones toward reclaiming his potential. As the ascent continued, Kevin embraced the unfolding journey, feeling the rekindling of his levels with every step, every challenge conquered, and every revelation gained in the enigmatic arena of the upper realm. Just then, Jonah cried out in pain and fell to the ground. Kevin ran over to help his friend. "What is it?" Kevin asked. "What's wrong?" "My leg," Jonah offered. "I stepped on a glowing stone awkwardly and I think I snapped something in my ankle." Kevin looked over the wound. Jonah's foot was bent in an unnatural way and his toes were turning an odd shade of blue. "Is it bad?" Jonah asked. "I want to complete our quest. We have to save the upper realm." Kevin's mind raced as he considered his options. "It's not great," Kevin replied, "but I can help." "No, Kevin," Jonah countered. "I don't want to slow you down. We've almost reached the top. Keep going. Leave me behind." Kevin smiled. "Not a chance. We've come this far together and we're going to make it to the top together. I won't leave you behind." Kevin contemplated his next move. "Let's rest for a moment. Maybe there's something in my satchel that can help." Though Kevin's satchel had been replenished after it was rendered like dust as he made the transition to the upper realm, he still didn't have his full array of herbs. He hoped, though, that there were a few remedies left that might provide relief. As he looked through his options, Kevin realized he would need a few more ingredients to help Jonah back on his feet. Kevin turned to his friend. "Wait here, Jonah. I'm going to gather supplies. I'll be back soon." The air in the upper realm carried a serene hum as Kevin set out on his quest for the ingredients needed to craft an herbal pill that could alleviate Jonah's ankle pain. Determination etched across his face, he traversed the unusual landscape of the mountain, each step leading him closer to the components that would form the remedy. As Kevin ascended the rocky terrain, his eyes keenly searched for the elusive elements. The vibrant hues of the flora and fauna surrounding him painted a surreal picture, a stark contrast to the natural world he knew. The glowing snail slime he sought glistened in the diffused light, nestled beneath the leaves of luminescent shrubs that carpeted the mountain slopes. "Interesting," Kevin whispered. With a gentle touch, Kevin carefully collected the snail slime, mindful of the creature that produced it. The snails in the upper realm had a soft glow, their shells adorned with patterns reminiscent of constellations. He marveled at the delicate beauty of these otherworldly creatures, wondering if their essence held the key to soothing Jonah's pain. Further along the path, Kevin noticed a tiny shrub with roots aglow, emitting a soft radiance that seemed to pulsate with energy. Intrigued, he knelt down to examine the source of the luminosity. The roots, intertwined with the rich soil of the mountain, gave off an otherworldly vitality. Kevin carefully dug around the shrub, ensuring not to disturb its delicate ecosystem. He then harvested the roots with a sense of reverence. Armed with the glowing snail slime and the radiant shrub roots, Kevin continued his ascent, his senses attuned to the environment around him. The elevation provided a natural advantage. The air was thinner, and the atmospheric conditions seemed to catalyze the chemical reactions within the herbal compounds. As Kevin reached a plateau overlooking the sprawling landscape below, he decided it was time to set up a small fire to facilitate the refining of the ingredients. He located a sheltered spot shielded from any errant breezes and fashioned a rudimentary fire pit. The ethereal glow of the ingredients cast an iridescent sheen across Kevin's face as he meticulously arranged them. The glowing snail slime, collected in a small vial, pulsed with an otherworldly halo of color. Kevin carefully mixed it with the radiant shrub roots, the combination creating an intriguing dance of sparking chemicals and aromas. The air seemed to cackle with energy as the components reacted to one another. Drawing upon the ancient knowledge of herbalism passed down through generations, Kevin infused the concoction with intention and purpose. He called upon the healing essence of the upper realm, channeling the natural energies that permeated the mountain. The glow of the fire reflected in his eyes, mirroring the fervor of his dedication. The fire flickered, casting shadows that danced upon the rocky surface. Kevin, consumed by the alchemical process, observed the fusion of ingredients with a trained eye. The herbal compound began to take shape, emitting a soft glow that mirrored the enchanting radiance of the snail slime and shrub roots. The mountain air carried the scent of newfound possibilities as Kevin marveled at the creation before him. The herbal pill infused with the essence of the upper realm promised relief for Jonah's ailment. The glow of the compound intensified as if resonating with the healing energies of the mountain. With the herbal remedy now in hand, Kevin couldn't shake the lingering doubt that had taken root within him. As he carefully sealed the pill in a vial, uncertainty gnawed at the edges of his resolve. The journey ahead, fraught with challenges and unknown perils, weighed heavily on his shoulders. Yet, holding the remedy for Jonah, Kevin found solace in the small victories along the way. The mountain, with its mystical aura and unseen trials, had tested his mettle. Crafting the herbal pill was a testament to his adaptability, a reminder that even in the face of doubt, the alchemy of determination could yield transformative results. Kevin made his way back to Jonah and offered him his newly crafted herbal pill. This concoction should help numb the pain in your ankle and allow you to reach the top of the mountain, but it won't be a permanent fix, Kevin explained. Once the effects wear off, you'll feel the pain again. Are you sure you're up for this? Jonah nodded with determination in his eyes. I want to see this through, Kevin. I can endure a bit of pain to reach the top. Dancers have lived with pain for their entire careers. This is nothing new to me. I know it's just another test. The herbal pill, crafted by Kevin's skilled hands, gleamed in the ethereal light of the upper realm. As he handed it to Jonah, an air of anticipation hung between them. You should feel a change almost immediately, Kevin offered. However, much to Kevin's dismay, the pill seemed to have little effect, and Jonah winced as the pain in his ankle persisted, if not intensified. Something's not right, Kevin muttered, furrowing his brow and examining the pill as if searching for answers within its herbal composition. Doubt crept into his mind, questioning the potency of the herbs he had so confidently selected. Maybe it just needs some time to work. Jonah attempted to reassure Kevin, his voice strained from the lingering pain. But doubt, once sown, had a way of taking root and growing into an unwelcome companion. What if I've lost my touch? What if I'm not as capable as I thought? Kevin voiced his insecurities, his doubts lingering in the air like a dissonant melody. Jonah, sensing Kevin's internal struggle, offered a comforting pat on the back. "We've faced challenges before, Kevin. This is just a bump in the road. We'll figure it out." "I thought I had regained my skills, my levels," Kevin confessed, his voice a whisper against the surreal backdrop. "But now it feels like I'm stumbling in the dark. What if I can't defeat the looming threat? What if I'm not enough to save Lily and everything I hold dear?" Jonah, concerned by the visible struggle within his companion, spoke words of encouragement. "Kevin, don't lose hope. We'll find a way through this just like we always have." Despite Jonah's reassurances, the fog of uncertainty had settled around Kevin. The climb, once fueled by determination, now felt like navigating a maze of doubt. As they continued their journey, Kevin wrestled with his inner demons, wondering if the once illuminated path ahead was now obscured by an insurmountable challenge. Kevin and Jonah thought they had conquered their last test on the mountain by overcoming the endless loop through self-belief, but then Jonah slipped on a glowing rock and sprained his ankle badly. Kevin's attempt to make an herbal remedy from snail slime and other ingredients surprised them both with its failure, and Kevin's rare moment of self-doubt now jeopardized their quest. Kevin's heart sank. Jonah was not responding at all to the herbal concoction Kevin had prepared for him. Night would be falling soon on the mountain, and they were still short of Kevin's goal of reaching the top. Kevin would never abandon a friend, even one as new to him as Jonah, but he was feeling the pressure to find the interloper and set the upper realm to rights as soon as possible. The light was starting to fade when Jonah's body gave a violent jolt. "Oh, wow," Jonah exclaimed. "I think it finally worked." Jonah slowly climbed to his feet, testing his balance cautiously but moving with more certainty by the moment. "Yes, your cure definitely worked. Thank you, Kevin. You're a miracle worker." Jonah gave a few experimental leaps, finishing with a grand jeté, but then stopped, slightly out of breath. "But maybe there's still something wrong with me. I shouldn't be so winded after just a few little jumps like that." Kevin had also noticed that his breathing was coming with slightly more difficulty. It gave him a clue as to what had impacted the potency of his herbal remedy. It must be the mountain air. It's much thinner at this high elevation, and it's changing the way our bodies process oxygen. That's why the concoction I gave you didn't work as fast as I thought it should, Kevin explained. Jonah nodded, understanding. "We'll have to keep that in mind going forward. There is still some light left. Should we push on to the top?" Although the sun was setting, Kevin agreed. The two of them continued their climb up the mountain. But as the day waned, the wind picked up viciously. Kevin and Jonah were clinging to a narrow shelf covered in thick vegetation when a gust nearly knocked Jonah off the side of the mountain. At the last moment, Kevin reached out and grabbed the ballet dancer by the hand and hauled him to safety. "I don't think we'll be able to make it any further," Kevin told Jonah. "We're going to have to tether ourselves to the mountain and sleep on this ledge for tonight." Jonah looked around. The ledge was extremely narrow and exposed to the constant gale-force winds that pummeled the mountainside as the sun went down. Worse, the wind was bitterly cold. Kevin could already feel his hands going numb. "We're not going to get much rest tonight here," Jonah observed, looking back down the craggy peak. "If we fall asleep, we'll risk losing our hold on the mountain, and it's possible we could get blown off the mountain and straight back into the valley below. We would probably be smashed into 1,000 pieces along the way as well." "If hypothermia doesn't kill us first," Kevin added. "There's no point building an open fire with this wind." Just then, a terrific crash of thunder came from overhead. Kevin looked up and saw the darkening sky wasn't just due to the sun going down. Heavy clouds were rolling in and threatening rain at any moment. That was enough to lead Kevin to a decision. "We need to devise some kind of shelter if we're going to survive until morning," he told Jonah. "This ledge isn't more than 2 feet deep," Jonah pointed out. "What kind of shelter could we build in such a small space? There's hardly enough room here even to hang a hammock." Kevin thought of the portable ledges that professional climbers and other mountaineers used to sleep safely while scaling sheer walls of rock over multiple days. They usually consisted of a flexible platform secured to the cliff's base. Many had walls like a tent to block the wind as well. "We're going to need a bit more than a hammock," Kevin told Jonah, "but we might be able to devise something to keep us safe." He explained the idea to Jonah. Kevin examined the vegetation that crowded the ledge on every side. There were enough young saplings that Kevin was sure that he could bend them out to provide a frame and a sleeping platform. "I was hoping we could tie our jackets to the frame to create something like a hammock," Kevin continued, "but I don't think that'll be enough." Jonah reached out and gave one of the large leaves a hard shake, testing its strength. "We could probably piece a bunch of these leaves together to create hammocks as well as the sides of the port ledge to keep the rain off us and our body heat in." "It's a good thought," Kevin agreed. "If only we had something to hold the leaves together. I don't think there are enough supplies in my satchel to create an adhesive that would stretch far enough to create an entire shelter." Kevin thought with longing of the resin he had discovered in Cambodia on a prior adventure. It was incredibly strong yet entirely flexible. It would have been perfect for something like this. Alas, he had not thought to bring any of it with him into the upper realm. "I've got something we can use," Jonah assured Kevin. He reached into a pocket and pulled out a simple needle and a large spool of thread. "You never know when you're going to need to reattach a ribbon to a ballet shoe or make a quick fix between acts to your costume," he explained. "Sounds like you already have some impressive sewing skills," Kevin observed. Jonah shrugged. "I can usually make it work. None of my stitches have come undone yet." "That's more than I can say for myself," Kevin admitted. Mentally, he made a note to see about adding some sewing skills to his ever-growing list of abilities. Kevin firmly believed that any and all skills could be useful to an intelligent and adventurous person like himself. "You get started on the hammock and sides for our portable ledge, and I will work on building a frame from these living saplings." Jonah instantly saw the wisdom in Kevin's plan, and the two of them got to work. The first drops of rain were beginning to fall when Jonah showed Kevin his finished product. He had overlapped dozens of the huge leaves, stitching them together to create a thick layer that would easily take his and Kevin's combined weights. "You even overlapped the leaves so that they wouldn't shed water," Kevin observed. "That's some really excellent work, Jonah." Jonah smiled, very pleased with Kevin's praise. He found Kevin's quest to reach the top of the mountain, recover his levels, and help the upper realm return to its rightful state inspiring. Jonah was happy and proud that Kevin had brought him along on his quest. Kevin figured out a way to lash the large sheets of leaves to the frame of living saplings he had bent into a triangular shape. When he was finished, the little shelter looked like half of a green tent sticking straight out of the side of the sheer cliff face. Jonah and Kevin climbed inside their shelter for the night. Inside it was very dark. The thick leaves blocked out any trace of the setting sun. However, it was a glorious relief to be out of the pounding winds. Just as Kevin fastened the side of the portable ledge to the cliff wall, another crack of thunder sounded overhead. The rain came down in torrents, but not a drop found its way inside Kevin and Jonah's cozy shelter. "I still don't know if I'll be able to sleep tonight between the storm and all of our other adventures today," Jonah said into the dark. "I don't suppose there's anything in your satchel that will help us get a good night's sleep so that we can be ready for whatever new test the mountain has in store for us tomorrow." "I could concoct something that would knock us both out until morning," Kevin admitted, "but it wouldn't be a good idea for us both to be soundly asleep in case something happens in the night." "I see your point about that," Jonah agreed. Kevin felt him lie back down on his half of the portable ledge. "I'll just have to try to think of something happy to help me relax and fall asleep." "What kind of things will you think of?" Kevin asked out of curiosity. "The first time I performed in Swan Lake," Jonah told him. "It was the first big role I ever got, but more than that, it was some of the best dancing I've ever done. Even if there hadn't been a single person in the audience, just getting to dance like that made it one of the happiest days of my life." Jonah's plan must have worked because he didn't say another word. Kevin could hear him breathing in a way that meant he had fallen deeply asleep. Kevin put his hands under his head and listened to the sound of the wind and the rain beating on their little makeshift shelter. He knew instantly what to think of: his darling Lily and the son and daughter who were growing inside her. His heart swelled with love for all three of them, and the glow of it warmed him as well as any fire could. There, on the side of the mountain, Kevin Williams finally dropped into a restful sleep, which was a good thing since the next day would be his most challenging in the upper realm yet. After several trials on the mountain that would lead Kevin and Jonah to the highest point in the upper realm and thus help Kevin regain some of his levels through the adventure, night fell amid a thunderous and dangerous storm. Jonah and Kevin devised an improvised portable ledge so that they could sleep safely until the morning. But morning would bring Kevin an entirely new set of challenges. Kevin and Jonah emerged from the shelter they had improvised on a narrow ledge near the top of a sheer cliff. The night had been cold, wet, and windy, but dawn brought warm air, gentle breezes, and the promise of another beautiful day in the upper realm. The two of them scaled up the rest of the cliff in short order. They had not been far from the top. Once there, they found themselves on a series of rock ledges that led up between steeper sections of rock. "This is more like it," Jonah declared. None of the ledges were more than a few feet high. This section of the mountain would be no more difficult to climb than a rather steep staircase. "We should be able to get to the top of the mountain by lunchtime," Jonah exclaimed with perhaps naive enthusiasm. Kevin hoped that Jonah was right, but withheld further comment. He still could not see the top of the mountain from where they were. He suspected not only that there would be a lot of steep climbing ahead of them, but also that there would probably be many more trials and tests for them to get through before they reached the top. Kevin didn't mind, however. It was only through the trials that they had already been through on the mountain that he had managed to regain what he could sense was his first 2 levels. Kevin still had 5 more levels to go until he was level 7 again. As far as Kevin was concerned, it couldn't happen fast enough. He missed his levels and felt vulnerable and unprotected without them. As they climbed, the series of ledges became even shallower, but the space between the 2 steeper sections of rock got narrower. Soon, Kevin and Jonah were tracking their way along the floor of a deep canyon. As they hiked along, Kevin kept his mind in a relaxed yet keen state of alertness. He was ready for anything, but not wearing himself out with anxiety. Jonah happily hummed a tune from the famous Sleeping Beauty ballet. He occasionally leapt from boulder to boulder or across the tiny trickle of a stream that ran along the bottom of the canyon. Suddenly, a shadow came over the narrow canyon, cutting off the warmth of the day. The 2 men looked up to see a fluffy white cloud briefly pass over the face of the sun. "That's nothing to worry about," Jonah said with relief. "After last night, I thought we might be in for another storm." Kevin decided that they should hurry on in any case. Although the cloud was small, it looked like it held rain, and the face of the mountain blocked their view of half of the sky. There was no way for them to know what was happening on the rest of the mountain, but Kevin didn't want to take any chances. "Come on, Jonah. I don't like the look of that cloud, and the sooner we get to the top of this mountain, the sooner I can get my levels back and look for the interloper." Jonah agreed amicably, giving a giant leap that almost didn't clear the creek at the bottom of the canyon. Kevin noticed that the little rivulet had somehow doubled in size. Was that just due to the fact that they were further upstream, or was the creek actually growing? From up ahead came a loud growling noise. Jonah froze in mid-pirouette. "Did you hear that? What was it? A lion? A tiger?" Kevin strained his ears, trying to hear the sound again. "Definitely not a lion or tiger," he told Jonah. "Besides, there's no animal we need to fear on this mountain. I can speak to any of them, and animals are far more reasonable than people once you've established communication." "I'll have to take your word on that," Jonah said with trepidation. But if that wasn't some kind of animal, what made that growling noise? I can't think of anything that... Jonah suddenly jumped back as the creek surged up over his shoes. "Ah!" Jonah exclaimed. "I hate getting my shoes wet. It's the worst. Then you have to walk around all day with wet shoes." "I think we've got a lot more to worry about than wet shoes," Kevin told Jonah. He scanned the walls of the tall, narrow canyon around them, but these walls were perfectly vertical and worn as smooth as glass. Kevin suddenly had a terrible idea about what had polished them to such smoothness. The only feature of any note was a large boulder, as big as a house, with an ancient pine tree growing up between it and the cliff walls just ahead. "Run!" Kevin ordered Jonah. "Run for that boulder. We have to get on top of it before it's too late." Kevin didn't wait for Jonah. He dashed for the boulder, snagging his friend by the sleeve as he passed him. "Why are we running? Before it's too late for what?" Jonah demanded. The growl came again, this time continuing and growing in volume until it was a roar. The ground shook under Kevin and Jonah's running feet. Jonah fought to keep his balance. "What is it? What's going on, Kevin?" "It's a flash flood," Kevin pointed ahead. Jonah's eyes went wide. A solid wall of water was slamming its way down the canyon ahead of them. The flood swept everything before it in its path. Vegetation, full-grown trees, rocks, stones, and even good-sized boulders. Kevin reached his boulder just in time. He grabbed onto the nearby tree and used the branches to yank himself up on top. He hoped that it would be high enough to keep them out of the flood. Jonah leapt up behind him using the same branch as a handhold. The water hit the boulder before Jonah could reach the top. The giant rock shook under Kevin's feet, quaking as large pieces of debris caught up in the flood slammed into it. He had to fight to keep his balance as he reached back to help Jonah. But just as Kevin was reaching for Jonah's free hand, the tree branch in Jonah's other hand snapped free of the trunk. Jonah fell back into the water with a scream. "Help! Help me, Kevin!" he yelled as the water swept him back down the canyon. Kevin didn't hesitate to jump in after him, but as he did, the strap of his herbal satchel caught on the broken tree branch, halting his jump in midair. Kevin looked up and saw that the strap was impossibly tangled in the branch. He would never be able to work it free and still have time to save Jonah. Without another thought, Kevin chose his new friend. He slipped free of the strap, abandoning his trusty satchel to go after his friend. Kevin dove into the water, pushing aside logs and other debris. He swam as hard as he could, aiming for Jonah's head, which bobbed up and down in the water. Kevin knew from their trek up the mountain that eventually the water would wash Jonah all the way back over the cliff that they had climbed up the day before. Jonah would never survive the fall, so Kevin had to get to him as fast as possible. "Jonah, I'm coming for you," Kevin yelled. "Try to swim against the current back to me." "I can't. The currents are too strong," Jonah screamed back. "Just try," Kevin ordered. "Every bit helps. We have to get out of this flood before it reaches the cliff face." Jonah put his head down and kicked with all the strength in his powerful dancer's legs. Kevin stretched out his stroke, his lungs burning, his muscles aching. He could see that they were almost to the end of the slot canyon. It would only take seconds for the flood to sweep them back down the shallow ledges and off the mountain entirely. But Jonah was now less than 10 feet from Kevin. "Almost there," he called encouragement to Jonah. "I'm almost to you. Reach for my hand." Jonah reached his hand out to Kevin's as the distance between them closed down to 5 feet, then 3 feet. But just before their fingers met, exhaustion overtook Jonah. His eyes rolled back in his head and his muscles suddenly went slack. He began to slip below the water. Kevin lunged forward and grabbed onto his new friend by the hair. "Jonah! Jonah! Can you hear me?" Kevin screamed over the roar of the flood. There was no response from Jonah. He was not even trying to keep his head above water, and Kevin was worried that he might still drown. Kevin held on to Jonah with one arm while he whipped off his belt and tied the two of them together. He did his best to keep Jonah's head above the water as he looked for a way to get them out of the flood before they reached the side of the mountain. Kevin's keen observations on his trip up the narrow canyon served him well now. Kevin remembered that there had been a large stand of sturdy bushes growing out of the wall of the canyon near the entrance. As they entered the final section of the canyon, Kevin pushed the two of them off the side of the wall. They zipped horizontally across the length of the flood just as the bushes came near. As Kevin suspected, they were above the level of the floodwaters. However, they were further above the level of the floodwaters than Kevin had hoped. It would take a mighty reach for Kevin to be able to grab them, especially with Jonah's dead weight. Kevin got himself into position, allowing the floodwaters to scrape him along the side of the canyon. He had to get as close as possible if he was going to save Jonah and himself. They were just about even with the bushes. Kevin propelled himself out of the water and latched onto the sturdy bush, its roots buried deep in the wall of the canyon. Kevin scrambled up out of the water, dragging Jonah behind him. He laid his friend on the narrow ledge and gave him a hard shake. "Jonah! Jonah, can you hear me?" But Jonah lay as still as death. Was Kevin too late to save his new friend? After sleeping safely through the stormy night in their makeshift tent on a ledge, Kevin and Jonah were caught in a flash flood. Kevin abandoned his trusty satchel of herbal remedies to dive into the water to try to save Jonah before he was swept back off the side of the mountain. Kevin managed to pull Jonah and himself out of the flood onto a ledge, but by the time he did, Jonah was unresponsive. Kevin shook Jonah again and called his name. Jonah did not respond. His body flopped limply as Kevin tried shaking him harder. Kevin refused to believe that he was too late to save his friend, but Kevin had to give up his satchel full of herbal remedies when he dove into the water to try to save Jonah. There still must be something he could do. Kevin cleared Jonah's airways and began CPR. After a few moments, Jonah began to revive, coughing and choking water back out of his lungs. Kevin turned Jonah over into the recovery position as water flooded back out of his mouth. Already below them, the flash flood was going down, the water running out over the side of the mountain and down into the valley below. "Thank you, Kevin. You saved me again," Jonah said when he could finally speak. "It was my pleasure," Kevin told him. Jonah coughed harshly. His lungs were still trying to clear themselves of fluid. "Nobody ever tells you that drowning is so painful. I don't suppose there's anything in your magical satchel that could help me with the pain, is there?" Kevin shook his head and showed his empty hands. "I lost my satchel when I went in the water after you. I've lost all of my herbal remedies." Jonah felt terrible. Kevin had been through so much to get some of his herbal ingredients back after he had discovered that they had turned to dust when he entered the upper realm. Now Kevin had lost them all over again. "I'm sorry, Kevin. It's all my fault. I know what you went through to get those ingredients back." Jonah hung his head. Kevin gave him a friendly pat on the back. "They're just ingredients, just bits of plants and minerals. Everything in my satchel is replaceable. You are one of a kind and can never be replaced." Kevin's friendship and sincerity instantly made Jonah feel better. He looked around. He and Kevin were now perched 3/4 up the wall of the narrow canyon, and their feet dangled dozens of feet in the air. The walls of the canyon below had been polished and smoothed by many floods over the centuries, so there were no footholds or handholds for them to use to climb down. "What do we do now?" Jonah asked. "I don't think we can get down from here." "If we can't go down, we'll have to go up," Kevin replied. They both looked up at the wall of the canyon. The floods didn't often reach higher than the ledge on which they currently sat. The walls above them were much rougher, and more bushes and plants grew out of the walls. It just might be climbable. Kevin made Jonah go first. Jonah was still shaky from his near brush with death, and Kevin wanted to be able to keep an eye on him. The climb up was even easier than it looked. The two of them made their way over to the tip of the canyon without too much difficulty. They had come out at a wide, sloping meadow. The grass was lush and inviting, and they both laid down to rest. Kevin was so exhausted after the long hike up the canyon and his harrowing swim through a flash flood to get to Jonah that he actually fell deeply asleep in a matter of seconds. Then a girlish voice spoke somewhere over his head. "Hello, where did the two of you come from?" Kevin looked up to see a woman standing over them looking down with mild curiosity. At least Kevin thought it was mild curiosity. She had fastened a daisy chain into an improvised pair of glasses, circling her eyes and hooking back behind her ears. The white daisy petals obscured most of her features. Always polite, even in an alternative form of reality, Kevin got to his feet to greet the newcomer properly. Jonah quickly followed him. "Hello," Kevin replied to the woman. "We just climbed up from a flash flood down in the canyon." "Why would you do that?" she asked with the tilt of her head. "Didn't you want to be in a flash flood? Narrow canyons are the very best place to find a flash flood, you know." Kevin realized that this was another denizen of the upper realm whose mind had gone vague and ditzy due to the disturbances caused by the interloper. He decided to keep things as simple as possible. "What you say about flash floods is true. It's a long story, but I don't want to bore you with it." "Why are you wearing glasses made out of daisy chains?" Jonah wanted to know. "You've heard of rose-colored glasses, right?" the woman asked. Jonah nodded. "Well, I like daisies much more than I like roses. They have many fewer thorns. So I decided to make myself some daisy-colored glasses, and what better to use than real daisies?" The woman was delighted with her own ingenuity and skipped about them in a large circle. "It's been nice to meet you," Kevin told her, "but we really need to be heading on now. There's some place we need to be as soon as possible." "Actually," Jonah began, "I think I need to rest a little more, Kevin. Between nearly drowning and the air being so thin, I am positively exhausted." The woman clapped her hands. "Yes, please stay. I haven't had anyone to talk to in ever so long." Kevin caved to his friend's request. Although this woman seemed as childlike and distractible as most of the other people he had met in the upper realm, she might be able to tell them something about what they could expect ahead. "Have you been on the mountain very long?" Kevin asked. "Ages and ages," the woman agreed. "But I had a very good reason for coming here." Kevin leaned forward. "Did Alohi, the gatekeeper of the White Tower, send you up here as well?" The woman frowned with a finger to her lips. "You know, I can't remember now. All the details seem to have gone very hazy. Why would Alohi have sent me up here?" "Alohi sent me here so that I could get my levels and my powers back," Kevin explained. "And after that, I need to find out who the interloper is who is hiding among all the other people of the upper realm. They somehow cheated their way into this plane of being, and it's thrown everything into disarray. I want to find the person and put an end to the chaos. Maybe that's why Alohi sent you up here too?" But in his private thoughts, Kevin doubted this woman could find her head with both her hands, much less spot a cunning interloper in disguise. The woman tilted her head again, her strange improvised glasses sliding down her nose. She immediately pushed them back up. They obscured so much of her face that Kevin couldn't even tell what color her eyes were. "Maybe that is why she sent me up here, and maybe it isn't. I don't think it matters anymore. Have you seen the big butterflies? Aren't they the most magical things you've ever encountered?" "They're very pretty," Kevin agreed diplomatically. Actually, Kevin didn't like the strange butterflies. They were beautiful, but they had such a peculiar effect on him. Every time he saw one, he seemed unable to tear his eyes away from them, and the rest of his thoughts slipped away. It made him feel as foggy and distracted as everybody else in the upper realm. "They are not just pretty," the woman said with surprising anger. "They're beautiful, magical, special. Next time you see one, you take a good look and you'll see what I mean." The strange conversation was making even Jonah uncomfortable. "Kevin, I think I've rested up enough now. We probably should be heading off." The two men got to their feet, said their goodbyes, and started heading up the slope of the meadow. "Where are you going?" the woman cried. "I told you," Kevin replied. "I need to get to the top of the mountain." But that's what I mean. The woman pointed in the opposite direction. If you want to get to the top of the mountain, the fastest way is through that cave over there. Kevin wasn't sure if he should be taking directions from someone who seemed to have the attention span of a goldfish. On the other hand, Alohi had probably once trusted her, and she had been on the mountain for a long time and should know her way around. "Are you sure?" Kevin asked. The woman nodded so hard that her daisy chain glasses bounced on her nose. "Absolutely, it's a shortcut." "And there aren't any wild animals or cave-ins or flash floods in there?" Jonah asked, looking worried. The woman laughed. "Nothing like that at all. Come on, I'll show you." She led them to a large cave opening at the bottom of the meadow. Kevin peered inside. There were no signs of any dangers. The cave led upward in a gentle slope. There were even a few oil lamps just inside the entrance to light their way. "It looks good to me," Jonah said, "and it would be nice to have a smooth path out of the weather for a while." Kevin nodded. "Thanks for showing us this shortcut," he said to the woman. But she had already wandered off back up the meadow and was plucking herself new daisies for a fresh chain. The cave was cool and inviting after the heat of the day. Kevin and Jonah walked up the sloping path. The oil lamps provided them with plenty of light, and all of them had full reservoirs. They would burn for days. "Smooth sailing from here," Jonah predicted. "We should get to the top of the mountain in no time if this keeps up." Something crunched under Kevin's foot. He paused to look at what it was. It was the skull of a good-sized animal, possibly a skunk or a raccoon. It must have been old to be so brittle to break under his feet. "Poor little guy," Jonah sighed. "Do you think it wandered into the caves and got lost?" "It would have to be a pretty dumb animal to get lost in here. There haven't been any turn-offs or even switchbacks. This tunnel is a straight shot up the mountain. How could anything get lost in here?" Kevin replied. But the next step he took crushed more old bones under his feet. Kevin started getting a bad feeling. "Did you hear that?" Jonah suddenly asked. "It was the strangest sound. I could have sworn I heard somebody breathing right behind me." Maybe it was air moving through the cave, Kevin wondered. Or maybe it was. But before he could finish his sentence, Jonah was suddenly lifted straight up into the air and tossed into the wall of the cave. He hit the wall with a smack and passed out. Kevin could only stare at Jonah's attacker. It wasn't a human or an animal. Still, Kevin recognized it immediately. It was a creature of myth and legend. It was a Yeti. After several adventures on the mountain leading to the highest point in the upper realm, Kevin regained 2 of his levels but still needed to regain 5 more. A chance encounter with one of the distractible denizens of the upper realm directed Kevin and Jonah to a shortcut to the top of the mountain through a series of caves. However, once inside, Jonah was attacked and knocked unconscious. Alone, Kevin faced Jonah's attacker, a huge and angry Yeti. Kevin stared in awe at the enraged Yeti. Even in the dimness of the cave, the oil lamps gave off enough light for him to see that the Yeti was at least 7 feet tall, covered in thick white hair and had very sharp teeth. He could also tell that the Yeti was female. "How dare you invade my home?" the Yeti yelled as she charged for Kevin. Kevin dodged out of the Yeti's path, twisting around her at the last moment to come up behind the mythical figure. The Yeti charged again, this time ramming into Kevin and sending him flying. Unlike Jonah, Kevin managed to twist himself around in midair, hitting the cave wall with his shoulder instead of his head. Kevin went on the offensive. He dove at the Yeti's knees, hoping to knock his larger opponent off balance. The Yeti plucked Kevin out of the air and shook him like a rag doll before dropping him to the ground. She raised one foot to stomp Kevin into a paste. But Jonah, having regained consciousness, rammed into the Yeti's side, finally knocking her off balance. She turned her fury on Jonah. The Yeti picked up a large rock, easily palmed it in her giant hand, and raised it high over her head to smash down onto Jonah. But Kevin leapt onto her back, locking his arm around her throat and cutting off her airway. The Yeti dropped the rock, which missed Jonah by an inch. The Yeti launched herself backward, smashing Kevin against the cave wall. Kevin lost his grip on her throat, and the Yeti twisted around to crush him in a bear hug. Kevin had regained 2 of his levels, but the Yeti was still much stronger and more powerful than he was. His kicks and struggles did nothing against her strength. Kevin was running out of air and was becoming lightheaded. He would only have one chance to break the Yeti's hold. Kevin lashed out with his legs, driving them into the wall of the cave. The leverage worked to topple the Yeti over backward finally. She released Kevin as she landed with a crash on top of one of the oil lamps. The lamp shattered, dousing her with oil. Unfortunately for the Yeti, the flame was not extinguished when the lamp was broken. It caught her oil-drenched fur on fire. The Yeti went up like a torch. The stench of burning hair filled the cave. The Yeti let out a scream of pain and terror. "Come on, Kevin," Jonah yelled. "We have to get out of here." Jonah was already heading up the cave in the direction that led to the top of the mountain. Kevin almost followed him, but he looked back as the Yeti shrieked again. The flames now covered the back half of her body. Although she had attacked Kevin unprovoked, he couldn't stand to walk away and let her die such a terrible death. Kevin tore off his jacket and dashed to the Yeti. He smothered the flames with his jacket, rolling the Yeti back and forth to make sure any remaining embers were extinguished. When he was sure the fire was completely out, Kevin quickly backed away, taking his smoldering jacket with him. Slowly, the Yeti sat up as she realized she was no longer on fire. The thick fur on her back was now charred black, but Kevin didn't think the flames had reached her skin. Just to be sure, he asked, "Are you injured? Do you feel any pain?" The Yeti seemed dazed and shook her head as if to clear it. "I am not hurt," she conveyed to Kevin as she tried to get a look at her own back. "Though my beautiful fur won't be the same for some time." The Yeti eyed Kevin without standing up. "You saved me," she said with some wonder. "Even after I attacked you and your friend, you tried to save me. You could have escaped with your friend and let me burn to death. Why would you do such a thing?" "We meant you no harm," Kevin explained as he transmitted his thoughts to the creature. "We only wanted to take the shortcut to the top of the mountain. Although you attacked us, I assumed you had your reasons, and burning alive is a terrible death for any living creature." "Then I am in your debt," the Yeti replied. Kevin shook his head. "There is no debt. I did not save you for my own gain. It was purely an act of mercy." As soon as Kevin spoke the words, a feeling rushed over him. It was familiar and very welcome. Kevin could sense that he had now regained his level 3 abilities. The Yeti got to her feet. "Then what I do now is also purely an act of kindness. I will show you what would have happened if you had continued to try to get to the top of the mountain through this cave." The Yeti led Kevin and Jonah deeper into the cave as Kevin told his friend of the Yeti's words of appreciation and warning. 100 feet beyond the place where the Yeti had attacked Jonah, the floor became black and bumpy. The Yeti stopped Kevin and Jonah from going any further. "If you had continued along the path you were on, this is where you would have wound up," she explained. "And this is what would have happened to you." The Yeti picked up a large stone and threw it down onto the black and bumpy floor. The stone broke through what was only a thin crust of cooled lava. The red glow of molten rock shined up through the break. "You would have fallen through the floor here and into this pit of magma. It would have killed you both instantly," the Yeti finished. "That was a close call," Kevin exclaimed. "I guess I should thank you for knocking my friend Jonah unconscious, Madam Yeti. A bump on the head is way better than being fried in a pit of hot lava." "Tell me about it," the Yeti replied dryly with another look at her singed back. "I'm so glad you showed us this," Kevin began, but then sighed. "I should have known better than to listen to that ditzy woman with the daisy-colored glasses. I wonder if she knew that this was here." "I'm not sure that woman knew her name," Jonah replied. I know that a lot of the people in the upper realm are a little dim and distractible now that the interloper has disturbed the balance of this plane of existence. But that woman was worse than anyone else I've met here. Doesn't matter now, Kevin decided. There's nothing for it. We'll have to backtrack through the cave and find another way to the top of the mountain. It's the only way I can get the rest of my levels back and finally find that interloper and put the upper realm in order again. Whoever you spoke to wasn't entirely wrong, the Yeti replied. There is a way through these caves to the top of the mountain, but it is a hidden secret known only to myself. However, I will show it to you. Kevin smiled. Is this another act of kindness, or will I be in your debt? Of course, I'm always happy to pay my debts, and it would be worth it to get to the top of the mountain today. This is purely an act of selfishness. The Yeti didn't smile in the way that humans did, but Kevin heard the amusement in her voice. I, too, have felt the imbalance in the upper realm. I want the balance restored as much as anyone. The upper realm is my home. The Yeti led Kevin and Jonah back down the path and into a secondary branch, which was almost hidden behind a stone outcropping. It would have been easy for Kevin and Jonah to miss it if they had not known it was there. The Yeti had to hunch herself as small as possible in order to fit into the smaller tunnel. The tunnel halted at a dead end, but the Yeti put her shoulder to a large boulder and slowly rolled it out of the way. Behind the boulder was a narrow vertical passage, much like a chimney. Kevin stepped into the passage and looked up. Far above, he could see the glow of daylight. This passage comes out on the top of the mountain, the Yeti explained. It is a difficult climb, but it should be possible for the two of you. Kevin and Jonah thanked the Yeti. She even gave them a boost up the vertical passage, which easily cut a good 10 feet off the trip. Kevin went first, wedging hands and feet on opposite walls and inching his way up. Jonah followed in the same manner his strong dancer's body used to prolong exertion. Finally, Kevin reached the top and hauled himself over the edge. He reached back to give Jonah a hand up for the last few feet. The two of them stood and looked around. They were indeed on the top of the mountain. Cloud cover blocked their view of the upper realm below the peak. The sun was strong, but the wind was cold and blew incessantly. Kind of a letdown after everything we've been through to get here, Jonah observed. There's nothing here. There's that. Kevin pointed to a stone pedestal no more than 2 feet across. He hurried to it, but as soon as he got near, his heart sank. Oh no, Jonah, you were right. Right about what? Jonah hurried after him. There really is nothing here, Kevin told him. Indeed, the stone pedestal was completely bare and empty. Whatever talisman Kevin needed to get his levels back was gone. After several adventures, Kevin regained 3 of his levels, but still needed to gain back 4 more. He and Jonah met one of the ditzy denizens of the upper realm who directed them to a shortcut through a cave. Although they encountered an irate Yeti along the way, Kevin and Jonah finally gained the top of the mountain, only to find the pedestal there was empty. Whatever Kevin needed to regain his levels was gone. Kevin and Jonah both stared at the empty pedestal. I can't believe it, Jonah exclaimed. After everything we've done to get here, after all we've been through, we finally make it to the top of the mountain and there's nothing here. But something was here, Kevin said as he motioned to the pedestal. Although he wouldn't have sent me all this way for nothing, maybe this is another test. A test of what? Jonah demanded. Kevin considered. Maybe it's a test of tenacity to see if I'll persist even when things get difficult. I just have to keep looking for whatever it is that will restore my levels. How can you look for something when you don't even know what it is? Jonah demanded. It could have been anything. A magical cup, a mystical wand, a gold medallion. For all we know, it was just a white feather, and the wind has blown it away back down the mountain. It definitely didn't blow away, a voice said behind them. The 2 men turned to see the woman they had met in the meadow standing behind them. She still wore improvised glasses made out of daisies. The white petals obscured her features almost entirely, and Kevin wondered how she could even see out of them. In her hand, she held a flat piece of highly polished obsidian. This was the woman who had directed Kevin and Jonah to the shortcut through the cave. However, the woman's directions would have caused them to fall into a pit of molten lava, the same hot lava that surely cooled and resulted in the obsidian the woman now held. Kevin and Jonah had only found the shortcut with the help of a Yeti. Kevin had won over to their side. Kevin was suspicious of the woman now, and not just because she had given them directions that could have led to both their deaths. The woman was acting much differently than she had when they had met her in the meadow. Jonah spotted the difference as well. What happened to her airy-fairy demeanor? Jonah asked Kevin. Before, she was as loopy as anyone else that I've met in the upper realm. Kevin had another concern. And how did she get up here to the top of the mountain before we did? She obviously did not come through the shortcut through the cave. Hello, the woman called with annoyance. I'm standing right here. Don't you know that it's rude to talk about somebody like they're not there? Like it's not rude to give people directions that could get them stomped by an angry Yeti or dropped into a pit of boiling lava. Jonah shot back, crossing his arms. You two seem to have survived just fine, she retorted. Jonah opened his mouth to give another angry response, but Kevin interrupted. He was losing patience with their sniping. This isn't getting us anywhere. I still need to find whatever it is that will restore my levels to me, he said as he looked directly at the woman. If you know anything about it, tell us now. Otherwise, we don't have time to waste with you anymore. Actually, I know all about it, she said in a smug tone. Kevin and Jonah traded glances, unsure if they should trust her. Finally, Jonah said, Okay, I'll bite. Where is the item that used to be on that pedestal? It's obviously what Kevin needs and why Alohi sent him here. Now we don't even know what it's supposed to be. It's missing, and I bet you're the one who took it. You are correct. I'm the one who took it, and it's right here. The woman held up the piece of obsidian. Even from this distance, Kevin could see it had been polished into a dark mirror. This is the only way you can get your powers back, Kevin Williams. Her words gave Kevin a jolt. How did you know my name? Kevin demanded. I never told it to you when we met before. Yes, you did, the woman contradicted him. You just don't realize how far back you and I go. Kevin suddenly realized that the woman did seem familiar. He would have noticed it earlier if it weren't for the flowers on her face and the spacey demeanor she had adopted earlier. Kevin let his mind go blank, allowing his memories to seek out her identity. His mind went far back, long before he had many of his adventures. All at once, the woman's identity came to him. You're Gwen Archer, Kevin exclaimed. I know you and your brother Dominic from Chicago. We were friends once, but then you decided to become my enemy. You tried to ruin my empire. Your empire? How impressed with yourself you've become, Kevin Williams. That's exactly why my brother and I and so many others in Chicago decided to take you down a peg or two. Your power was growing too great. Your influence was too widespread. You were a newcomer who thought you knew everything. Gwen ranted as if years of envy and anger were boiling over from her heart. Kevin had no patience for the Archer sibling self-pity. Gwen and Dominic had both been successful in their own right in Chicago. Gwen ran a real estate concern, Gwendom Realty, and her brother Dominic had many business connections that had made him wealthy, if not wholly respectable. But Kevin knew that as his profile rose, after his secret investment made him rich, and after Williams Media, and then Williams and Williams Pharmaceuticals made him wealthy and influential on a scale larger than either Gwen or Dominic could imagine, they sought to undermine him. Gwen, there was plenty of room in Chicago for all of our business undertakings. I can't help it that so many like Dalton Steele, the Healing Arts School, and the citizens of Chicago who elected my wife Lily as mayor, sided with me when they saw the true nature of your heart. Kevin said as he drove home words that he knew were true but would only raise Gwen's anger to an even greater height. Gwen laughed uproariously as if the roars would replace words, or perhaps that Kevin stated the truth had caused words to escape her. Kevin stalked forward. "Give me that piece of obsidian, Gwen. There's more than just my existence at risk here. The entire upper realm will fall if I can't get my powers back and complete my mission from Elohi, the keeper of the White Tower." "Never," Gwen declared. "I will do whatever it takes to stop you from getting your hands on this." She waved the obsidian mirror at Kevin in a taunting manner. "But you didn't say anything about me," Jonah yelled. Gwen had been so focused on Kevin that she hadn't noticed him sneaking around to her side. He charged at Gwen, knocking her to the ground. The fragile piece of obsidian went flying. Horrified, Kevin dove face first at the ground, his arms outstretched. He just managed to catch the obsidian mirror with his fingertips. "Great catch," Jonah cheered. Gwen stumbled to her feet. "Oh no, this is terrible. I know that as soon as you look in that obsidian mirror and get your powers back, Kevin, you will come for me." Kevin didn't disagree. Kevin believed in grace and mercy, but Gwen and Dominic Archer had proven too many times that those virtues were wasted on them. Kevin couldn't allow the siblings to continue to be a threat, not only to him but to all of the upper realm. Gwen continued backing away from Kevin. "I'm not going to let you kill me," she declared dramatically. "I would rather die on my own terms than at your hands, Kevin Williams." And to Kevin's astonishment, Gwen stepped off of the mountaintop, allowing herself to fall through thin air. Screaming, she disappeared into the cloud cover below. "I can't believe she did that," Jonah exclaimed. "There's no way she could have survived that fall." Kevin shook his head, mystified by Gwen's choice. She wasn't vague and distracted like most of the other people I've met here in the upper realm, but perhaps the imbalance from the interloper affected her mind in a different way. Kevin directed his attention back to the obsidian mirror. "But what's important now is that I get my levels back so that I can find that interloper and restore order to this plane of consciousness." "She said that you would have to look in the mirror in order to get your levels back," Jonah reminded Kevin. "Could it really be that simple?" "There's only one way to find out." Kevin held the mirror up to his face. The polished surface showed him his face reflected back darkly. "Is it working?" Jonah asked after a minute. "Do you feel your levels coming back?" Kevin frowned. "I feel something, but it doesn't feel like my levels are coming back." Kevin's eyes went wide with alarm. "In fact, it feels like I'm losing the levels that I already gained back." Indeed, Kevin could feel the power of the 3 levels he had regained leeching away from his grasp. Again, he was left feeling weak and vulnerable without his special abilities. His hand shook so badly that he nearly dropped the obsidian mirror. "They're gone. All my levels are gone again," Kevin exclaimed. "What?" Jonah looked dumbfounded. "How is that possible? That mirror was supposed to restore all of your levels. Why isn't it working right?" "Actually, the mirror worked exactly the way it was supposed to," a new voice said behind them. Kevin turned around and his jaw dropped. A new person was standing with them on the mountaintop. Kevin Williams found himself staring directly into the eyes of another Kevin Williams. A Kevin Williams with a dark soul. Kevin met an old enemy from Chicago, Gwen Archer, at the top of the mountain in the upper realm. Gwen had already taken possession of the obsidian mirror that Kevin believed he needed to regain his levels. Kevin and Jonah worked together to get the mirror from Gwen, and she chose to jump off the mountaintop rather than face Kevin's wrath. However, when Kevin looked into the mirror, he didn't gain his levels back. He lost them all again, and a new person appeared on the mountaintop. Kevin Williams found himself staring directly into the eyes of another Kevin Williams. Kevin and Jonah both gaped at the newly arrived Kevin. He was identical to the original Kevin, although his clothes were very different. Kevin's personal style was modest and unassuming, to the point he was often mistaken for someone much poorer than Kevin actually was. Kevin never minded and practically lived in his uniform of Dockers and Keds. But his counterpart was dressed in fancy, slick clothing. All of it was black and looked expensive. There was a massive gold watch on one wrist and a thick gold chain around his neck. However, the slim gold wedding ring was missing from his left hand. Instead, there was a pinky ring with an enormous ruby on his right. "Wow," Jonah breathed. "He looks just like you, Kevin, but only, kind of evil and dark." "I prefer pragmatic and stylish," Dark Kevin shot back. "You wouldn't know real evil if it bit you in your codpiece, Twinkle Toes. Why don't you go take a short leap off a tall mountain and let me and my pale shadow here talk?" "Name-calling is the lowest form of wit," Kevin stated, defending his friend. "There's no need for that among rational adults." Dark Kevin made a show of looking around. "Are there other adults here? All I see is a bleeding heart Pollyanna and his boy Blunder." Before Kevin could respond, Dark Kevin darted forward, moving almost too fast for the human eye to follow. He snatched the obsidian mirror from Kevin's hand. "Hey!" Kevin exclaimed. "Give that back! I need it to regain my levels." "If at first you don't succeed, try again," Dark Kevin sneered. "You don't even know how to use this thing." Dark Kevin said as he waved the obsidian mirror around. "Otherwise, I wouldn't be here." "I don't know what went wrong," Kevin admitted. "I will take the mirror back to Alohi and she'll be able to tell me how to use it." "You want it?" Dark Kevin taunted. "Then come and get it." Kevin didn't know why his doppelganger was behaving this way. It was hard for Kevin to watch himself being so arrogant and cruel. But Kevin also knew that the only way to stop a bully was to stand up to them, even if that bully wore your own face. Kevin marched up to his dark reflection and stared him in the eyes. Although he no longer had his levels, Kevin was still a trained martial artist and had better reflexes than most people. He grabbed for the obsidian mirror only to find that Dark Kevin was now holding it over his head out of Kevin's reach. "Up high," Dark Kevin taunted, wiggling the mirror. Kevin jumped, reaching for the mirror again, but quick as a wink, Dark Kevin now held it low by his side. "Down low," Dark Kevin sneered. Kevin made another grab only to have Dark Kevin toss the mirror up over his own head and catch it with his other hand. Dark Kevin held it far out to his left. "To the side." Kevin felt like one of those kids caught in a game of keep-away, only he was facing a single opponent. He put everything he had into a dive after the mirror, but again Dark Kevin snatched it out of his reach. "Oh, you're too slow." Dark Kevin crowed and laughed as Kevin went sprawling in the dust. Kevin fought back humiliation as he climbed to his feet. "You don't want to be like this," he told his dark reflection. "There's too much at stake for these petty games. If I don't get my levels back, the entire upper realm will be destroyed." Dark Kevin pulled back a fist and slammed it into Kevin's stomach. Kevin bent over with a woof. "Don't tell me what to do," snapped Dark Kevin. Kevin straightened, controlling the pain with his breathing the way he had been trained to. He looked his darker self in the face. "I can give as good as I get," Kevin told him. He threw a textbook perfect punch at his doppelganger. But Dark Kevin caught the fist in mid-punch. He squeezed and twisted Kevin's fist, causing the tendons to creak and the bones to grind together. He shoved Kevin away. "I'm sick of the way you've been pushing me down for years," Dark Kevin declared. He delivered a second vicious punch to Kevin's midsection as he continued. "Anytime I want to take something or hurt someone or even take a day off and let the whole world go to the devil if it wants, you're there, stopping me with your patience." Another punch. "And your goodness." Another punch. "And your self-righteous sense of responsibility." The fifth punch was an uppercut to Kevin's jaw, which lifted him off of his feet and sent him flying. Kevin hit the ground hard. Dark Kevin rolled his shoulders and adjusted his expensive suit jacket back into place. "But not anymore," Dark Kevin declared. "Now that I'm free from your whiny do-gooder nonsense, I'm going to make my own rules now." He turned his back on Kevin, heading for the trail leading down the mountain. "Sayonara, sucker," he called back over his shoulder. But Dark Kevin found Jonah blocking his path, arms spread. "I don't know how you got here or why you are here," Jonah told Dark Kevin, "but I know my friend Kevin is better than you are. I'm not going to let you walk off this mountain when he needs that mirror." Dark Kevin rolled his eyes and huffed in annoyance. "I don't even want to dignify that with a response," he said. He picked up a handful of pebbles and pelted one at Jonah. It hit him in the arm hard enough to leave a welt. "Ow, that hurt," Jonah cried. "Good," Dark Kevin laughed. "It's supposed to hurt, idiot." He pelted another pebble at Jonah harder. This one grazed his cheek, opening up an ugly cut. Blood poured down Jonah's face. He gasped in pain. Kevin yelled for his dark self to stop, but Dark Kevin ignored him. He continued to pelt Jonah with pebbles, each one thrown harder than the last. Jonah yelped and covered his head with his hands, leaving his body unprotected. Dark Kevin made a show of winding up like a baseball pitcher for the last pebble. It struck Jonah in the leg. There was a sickening crack of bone breaking, and Jonah collapsed to the ground, screaming in pain. It should have been impossible for an ordinary person to throw a tiny pebble hard enough to break a human femur. Kevin realized that could only mean one thing. "You have my levels," Kevin gasped in horror. He hadn't even been able to sense that Dark Kevin had levels without levels of his own. "All 7 of them," Dark Kevin gloated, "and I'm not afraid to use them." "But you can't use your levels against someone who can't defend themselves with levels of their own," Kevin protested. Snarling, Dark Kevin turned on his light self. "I told you not to tell me what to do." Dark Kevin launched himself high into the air. He came down hard, slamming his fist into the ground. A wave of hellish red light burst from his fist, racing out in concentric circles over the mountaintop. Kevin heard Jonah scream but could do nothing to help him. He was racked with pain of his own. The red light caused Kevin's whole body to shake and shudder. His ears began to bleed, and it felt like his eyes would explode. This is what the full power of his own levels felt like. It was pain like Kevin had never imagined. He was still writhing on the ground when his doppelganger scooped him up with one hand and held him out over the void of the valley below. "You know how we've always wanted to fly?" Dark Kevin jeered. "One of us is about to get the chance." "Don't do this," Kevin pleaded. "There must still be a part of you that's good like I am." "Wrong," Dark Kevin declared. "You've been right your whole life, Kevin. Funny how you're finally wrong now." Dark Kevin leaned in closer and dropped his voice. "Dead wrong." Kevin kicked and flailed with all his might but could not break his doppelganger's grip. He looked down. He could see nothing but misty clouds below him, hiding the valley far, far below. This was the same spot where Gwen had thrown herself from the mountain after he had taken the obsidian mirror from her. "Don't worry," Dark Kevin told his other half. "I'll take good care of Lily and our babies when I get back to our plane of existence." Kevin's eyes went wide. He opened his mouth to scream in denial, but before he could draw a breath, Dark Kevin opened his fist. Kevin Williams dropped from Dark Kevin's hand and fell off the side of the mountain. Kevin's appeal to his new evil alter ego, Dark Kevin, hits deaf ears. Dark Kevin is thrilled to be free from Kevin's control, and after breaking Jonah's leg, Dark Kevin drops Kevin off the side of the mountain and seemingly to his death. Kevin was floating somewhere outside of his body. Lights and colors swirled around him as he fought to orient himself. After a moment, his vision cleared, and Kevin found himself looking down at the offices of Williams Media, where Kevin had set up a new film studio. Dozens of people were walking out of the office. Some of them looked angry, but others were in tears. In a blink, Kevin was inside the corner office. His staff from Williams Media, Adriana Wright, Emo Squire, and Sandra Wilson, were gaping at the man sitting behind the large desk. It was Kevin's doppelganger, Dark Kevin. Although his features were the same as Kevin's, this darker version was dressed all in posh designer clothes, all in black. Gold glittered from his watch, pinky ring, and the chain around his neck. "But how can we shoot a movie without any actors?" Sandra demanded. "Or a script," Emo added. "You fired the screenwriter, too." Dark Kevin waved their concerns away. "We've got AI for all of that. It will be faster and cheaper." "A computer can't replace true artistry." Adriana looked like she either wanted to cry or strangle Dark Kevin. "A movie like our remake of Cleopatra demands creativity and passion. Our documentaries about the environment need the human touch to bring them to life." "Yeah, we're not doing that kind of stuff anymore," Dark Kevin said as he tossed a thin screenplay at them. Sandra caught it, though a brass fastener nearly took out her eye. "Here's what we're doing now," Dark Kevin added. The staff of Williams Media looked over this script. "But this doesn't even make sense," Adriana protested. "This is nothing but a series of car chases and explosions and sex." "It's good enough. Get to work. This is going to be our only property. Everything after this is all sequels and prequels. I want the first 3 installments done by the end of the month. Now get out of my way." Dark Kevin shoved his way past them. "I've got a hot date with an actress. Of course, I haven't told her yet. She's an ex-actress. AI really does make everything better." Kevin felt rage building as he watched his doppelganger undo all of his hard work over the recent weeks. But the vision before him dissolved away only to be replaced with a new one. Kevin was now gazing down at the smoking room of an exclusive country club. Rich men sat around in leather chairs, and the skins of endangered animals were positioned as rugs under their feet. Dark Kevin was at the center of a group of men smoking a cigar with one hand and holding a glass of whiskey with the other. "And that's how we're going to take over the world," Dark Kevin finished telling the men around him. The men all cheered and nodded their heads in agreement. Kevin was horrified. He recognized the men standing around his doppelganger. They were all enemies of Kevin. There was Quentin Covington, who had planned to melt the polar ice caps in order to force billionaires to buy condos in his luxury space station. There was Mario Kessler, the last surviving member of the DC family who had tried to run Kevin out of town when he won an herbalist competition in the city and saw his power rise appreciably. There was Hayden Smart, the man who had tried to murder Lily at the gender reveal party for their babies. There was even Kevin's vindictive Uncle Thomas, who miraculously recovered from the medical coma Kevin had placed him in. Dark Kevin waved his cigar expansively. "We will bring down the Foundation in no time at all." Kevin tried to lunge forward and put a stop to his evil double's plans, but then he had no weight and no strength in his alternative universe. The scene again faded to be replaced with another. This time it was outside the home he shared in the Chicago suburbs with Lily, their family, and members of the Radiants who acted as security guards. But no one was patrolling the perimeter of this estate now. Instead, a high wall had been built around the property with signs advising the trespassers, door-to-door salesmen, and Girl Scouts selling cookies would be shot on sight. In the yard, Hank the dog and Missy the cat shivered. They were cold and miserable, and desperate to get back into the warm house again. Dreading what he might find, Kevin willed himself into the house. He found himself in the main living room. Dark Kevin was here again. With him this time was Lily's mother, Dorothy. Instead of scolding and sniping at Kevin, Dorothy was positively riveted by whatever Dark Kevin was saying. She clung to his arm, looking up at him with worshipful eyes. Anytime Dark Kevin took a breath, Dorothy would interject. "You're so right, Kevin. You're so rich and smart and handsome. I thank the stars every night that Lily has you for a husband. You're the best son-in-law ever." As terrible as this scene was, it was replaced with one that was much worse. Kevin now found himself looking down into the room he and Lily planned to turn into a nursery. Although Lily had only been a few months pregnant the last time Kevin saw her, there were now 2 babies in the matching cribs. One was a boy, and the other one was a girl. Unfortunately, Dark Kevin was here as well. He paced up and down the room, yelling and screaming at Lily and the babies. Kevin was so furious he couldn't even focus on whatever terrible things Dark Kevin was saying to his beloved family. Lily and both the babies were in tears. Lily tried to comfort her children while repeating herself over and over. "Kevin, I'm sorry we made you mad. Please stop yelling at us. The babies and I will do whatever you want. Just please stop yelling," Lily pleaded. Her hurt bafflement was a dagger in Kevin's heart. Kevin could never stand to see Lily in even the slightest amount of pain. He tried to reach out to her, to comfort her, but as he extended his arms, the vision suddenly shrank, growing smaller and smaller as if Kevin was zooming backward, far, far away. Kevin's head suddenly rocked to the side, pain blossoming in his cheek as if from a blow. He shook his head hard and blinked his eyes. When he opened them again, Kevin realized that he was back in his body. He was lying on his back on the side of the mountain. Standing over him was his friend Jonah, the ballet dancer. His hand was raised to slap Kevin again. "It's okay," Kevin exclaimed. I'm awake. "Thank the stars," Jonah exclaimed. "I was starting to think you were dead." Kevin sat up and looked around. Jonah had devised a splint for his broken leg and had a makeshift crutch propped up beside him. "What happened?" Kevin asked. "I was sure I was a goner when my doppelganger threw me off the top of the mountain." "When you fell, I think you hit that net up there," Jonah pointed up. Sure enough, there was a large net, like the kind acrobats use, suspended in the treetops over Kevin's head. There was a ragged hole in the center of it. "Looks like it broke your fall, but your fall broke it, too," Jonah added. Kevin couldn't imagine who had put that net there or why, but for now he needed to focus on finding his double and stopping him. "Did you see where my doppelganger went after he threw me off the mountaintop?" he asked Jonah. "He said something about getting down off the mountain," Jonah explained. "But I was in so much pain I didn't catch it all." Kevin's heart sank. The valleys and plains of the upper realms surrounded the mountain. It wasn't much of a clue as to where to start looking for Dark Kevin first. He could have been heading anywhere. "How far down the mountain are we, Jonah?" "Not very," Jonah told Kevin regretfully. "We're just below the peak. It took me hours to make it even this far with my broken leg." Jonah looked regretful. Kevin knew it must have cost his friend a huge amount of pain to go anywhere with his snapped femur. "Thank you for coming to look for me," Kevin told his friend. "If it wasn't for you, I might still be lying here unconscious. Now I won't lose any more time going after my doppelganger. I need to stop him before he can cause real trouble." Jonah's eyes went wide. "Are you sure going after your doppelganger is smart, Kevin? I mean, he's got all kinds of things that you don't, like levels and a lack of a moral compass and really cool clothes." "I think my clothes are cool too," Kevin said, a little hurt. "But yes, I have to stop him as soon as possible." Kevin stood up. He was battered and bruised from his fight with Dark Kevin and his fall off the mountaintop. Fortunately, none of his bones were broken. "I'll understand if you have to leave me behind," Jonah offered. "It will take me forever to get anywhere with my leg like this." "I would never leave a friend behind," Kevin assured Jonah. "And I know exactly how we're going to get you down the mountain with all speed, but without risking any further damage to your leg." A short time later, Kevin was running down the mountainside, his legs stretching to keep up with his momentum. At any moment, he could trip and roll down a cliff face, but he had no time to waste and was willing to take the risk. At his side ran the Yeti. Her long legs easily kept up with Kevin's. Cradled in her arms, as safe as a newborn, was Jonah. The Yeti had instantly agreed to help Jonah and Kevin. She was still hoping that Kevin could restore the balance to the upper realm, which was the Yeti's home. The three of them broke through the trees at the base of the mountain. They were still at some elevation and could see much of the valley where Kevin had first arrived when he reached the upper realm. Where do we go from here? The Yeti asked Kevin. Kevin scanned the landscape but saw no sign of his darker self. I have no idea where to find him, Kevin admitted in despair. Meanwhile, Dark Kevin had reached his destination and was very satisfied with himself. Killing off his better half had been incredibly satisfying. It was wonderful to know that good Kevin's morals and scruples would never hamper him. They were so inconvenient. Now he was ready to put the next part of his plan into motion. He pulled out a wickedly sharp knife, his day dagger, as he entered the structure. Dark Kevin smiled a very dark smile. Any day he got to commit murder twice was a good one. One of Kevin's old enemies, Gwen Archer, tricked Kevin into looking into an obsidian mirror, which unleashed a dark doppelganger of Kevin. Dark Kevin Williams broke Jonah's leg and threw Kevin off the mountain. Now Kevin and Jonah have returned to where Kevin first started in the upper realm with the help of the Yeti Kevin met on the mountain. Kevin was determined to find and stop Dark Kevin from doing further damage to the upper realm, but had no idea where to find him. The true and good Kevin Williams stared out over the plain of the upper realm. I know the dark version of me must be up to some kind of mischief or mayhem, but with somebody that bad, that completely amoral, that evil, there's no telling where he might try to start. He must have given some idea where he was heading next, Jonah prompted Kevin. The Yeti set Jonah on the ground, being careful not to jostle his broken leg. The leg was splinted, but Kevin knew it must still cause Jonah terrible pain. Additionally, Jonah was a ballet dancer and was surely worried about the future of his dancing, but Jonah was a stalwart friend and companion. His only concern right now was helping Kevin. What did DK say before he threw you off the mountain? DK? Kevin asked. Yeah, DK for Dark Kevin, Jonah replied. We wouldn't want one of those silly sequences where people get you two totally confused just because you look alike. No danger of that, Kevin grumbled. DK dressed completely differently from Kevin, opting for expensive black suits and flashy jewelry, as opposed to Kevin's simple dockers and keds. Kevin thought back to those terrifying moments right before DK tossed him from the edge of the mountain peak. He said something about returning to the mundane plane in order to insert himself into my life there. Jonah's eyes went wide. Does that mean we have to go back to the mundane world to chase him down? I'll go with you anywhere, Kevin, but I admit I was hoping there was still a chance I could refine my skills and achieve master status before returning. As you know, a person can only come to the upper realm once. That's what makes me think DK hasn't actually returned to the mundane world yet. Kevin was working through his thoughts aloud. He might have all of my levels, but they still haven't been refined. Somebody as egomaniacal and self-centered as Dark Kevin wouldn't pass up the chance to gain even greater power while he's here. Good. That at least narrows it down to just the upper realm, the Yeti threw in. How big is the upper realm actually? Jonah wanted to know. The Yeti glared. Darn it, Jonah, I'm a Yeti, not a cartographer. This isn't getting us anywhere, Kevin exclaimed in frustration. How am I supposed to fight somebody who is exactly like me, only he has all of my levels and abilities and none of my morals or ethics? Maybe that's it, Jonah said. If he's exactly like you, Kevin, then you're exactly like him. I think the pain is starting to affect Jonah's mind, the Yeti grumbled. No, I think he's right. Kevin snapped his fingers as a light went on in his mind. If DK is exactly like me, I'm exactly like him. I can think of what I would do next, and that's probably at least close to what DK is plotting too. That's brilliant, Kevin. But then Jonah frowned. So what were you planning on doing next? Kevin thought. After I reached the top of the mountain and got my powers back, which DK did, I was planning on returning to the White Tower to heal Alohi. It doesn't sound like healing someone is a very DK thing to do, the Yeti observed. That's right, Kevin agreed. But Alohi is in no condition to defend herself right now. The imbalance from the interloper has affected her as much as it has the upper realm. She was unconscious when I left her. We have to get to her before DK can do her any harm. The Yeti scooped Jonah back up in her arms. Kevin began running to the white tower in the distance with the Yeti and Jonah on his heels. Dark Kevin leaned over the sleeping form of the keeper of the white tower, Alohi. Alohi had collapsed after sending Kevin on his quest to recover his lost levels at the top of the mountain. She had existed somewhere between waking and sleeping ever since. But now DK had the perfect opportunity to put an end to the guardian of the White Tower of the Upper Realm once and for all. He leaned in closer, admiring the way that the light glinted off of his weapon, his day dagger. It would look so beautiful plunging into Alohi's throat. But just as the tip neared the place where her pulse fluttered in her neck, something hit DK's wrist with a clang, causing his day dagger to go flying from his grip. "Get away from her," yelled a voice from the door. DK recognized the voice because, of course, it was his own. "Not you again." DK spun around to find his good doppelganger, Kevin Williams, standing in the doorway. Kevin had thrown his own night dagger to stop DK from splitting Alohi's throat. "You're supposed to be dead," DK pouted. "I'm harder to kill than I look," Kevin retorted. DK gave a wicked grin. "Good. That means I am harder to kill than I look too." Kevin scooped his night dagger up from the floor. "I'm still willing to try." "You know, you're making this very awkward," DK sighed. "I don't like people watching me when I commit murder. There's so much pressure. I get performance anxiety." He grabbed his own day dagger from the floor. "I doubt that," Kevin said dryly. DK waved his day dagger at Kevin like a school teacher scolding a naughty pupil. "Snarkiness does not become the good and the great. Leave it to professional evildoers like myself." "I'm not going to let you kill Alohi in her own tower," Kevin vowed. "Well, in that case..." DK scooped up Alohi and slung her over one shoulder. With his other hand, he held out his day dagger. "On guard!" DK lunged at Kevin with his day dagger. Kevin parried the blow with his own night dagger. DK hacked at Kevin with his dagger again and again. Each time, Kevin barely managed to get his own dagger up in time to stop the blow. Kevin had all the speed that dedication and training could give an ordinary human. But DK had the super speed of levels that should have rightly been back in Kevin's control. Kevin realized that DK was just toying with him, backing him up little by little. Soon, Kevin was at the top of the long circular stairs that led up from the base of the White Tower to Alohi's room. One more step and Kevin would tumble backward down the long stairs. Obviously, this was DK's plan all along. The next time DK lunged, Kevin instead jumped as high as he could, grabbing the beam that crossed the ceiling over his head. He pulled himself up onto it and out of DK's reach. "Ha ha," DK crowed. "Just as I planned. Now my path is clear." DK rushed by Kevin, still carrying Alohi over his shoulder. He raced down the stairs. Kevin dropped to the floor and prepared to race after him. But DK looked back, aimed his day dagger directly at Kevin's chest, and let off a bolt of leveled energy that glowed red and deadly. Although Kevin had no levels of his own at the moment, his night dagger had been a gift from the Night King and held the powers of the Upper Realm. Kevin got the dagger up just in time to block the bolt of level energy. The night dagger absorbed the bolt, but the force of its impact knocked Kevin back off of his feet and into Alohi's room. Kevin jumped up to continue his pursuit of DK, but just then another earthquake struck the Upper Realm. The entire tower shook and swayed with the seismic event. Kevin could hear beams creaking and the blocks of stone grinding against each other. Would this be the earthquake that finally brought down the White Tower? Fortunately for Kevin, it was not. After a minute, the earthquake ceased and the White Tower stopped swaying on its foundations. Kevin sprinted from the room and down the staircase. He reached the bottom without seeing any sign of DK or Elohi. He ran out of the tower. Jonah and the Yeti were waiting for him there. "Where did he go?" Kevin panted. "DK kidnapped Elohi while she was still unconscious and ran out with her. Where did DK go?" The Yeti and Jonah traded confused looks. "We haven't seen anybody come out of that door except you, Kevin." "Unless this is one of those silly sequences where we mistake DK for the good Kevin," the Yeti added. "Maybe you are actually DK in disguise." "Don't think so," Jonah put in. "He hasn't called us any names yet. I'm not sure DK could resist calling me a prancing pinhead or saying that you're an overgrown overcoat or something like that. This must be the real Kevin Williams. There are no other doors from the White Tower," Kevin, who was indeed the good Kevin, pointed out. "If DK and Elohi didn't come this way, they must still be inside." The three of them went back into the White Tower. Kevin and the Yeti searched the tower from top to bottom but found no sign of DK or Elohi. Kevin sat down, discouraged for the moment. "I can't believe it. They both disappeared into thin air." Fearing Dark Kevin meant to harm Elohi, the keeper of the White Tower of the Upper Realm, Kevin and Jonah, with the help of a friendly Yeti, rushed back to the tower. But DK kidnapped Kevin and disappeared into thin air during an earthquake. Although despair threatened to overwhelm Kevin, he took a deep breath. He knew in his private thoughts that nothing would be accomplished by giving in to depression and giving up. He needed to think clearly and work out the problem from a place of logic. He sat down with Jonah and the Yeti on the lowest level of the White Tower. Fortunately, the tower hadn't toppled over in the last earthquake, but Kevin could see several stones that were far out of alignment. The constant earthquakes were taking their toll on the White Tower. It wouldn't stand forever, but that was a problem for another time. Jonah sat with his broken leg stretched out before him. With Kevin's help, he re-splinted it on the mountain, but it still gave him a lot of pain. "I'm going to work through this aloud," Kevin told his new friends. "I know that my dark doppelganger DK grabbed Elohi, who is the keeper of the White Tower of the Upper Realm." Kevin motioned all around them to the tower they were sitting in. "I fought DK, but without my levels there was no way I could win. He got by me and headed down the stairs from Elohi's room up above." Jonah nodded. He knew this part of the story. "Madam Yeti and I were outside the whole time. There's only one door to the White Tower, and DK and Elohi didn't come out of it." "And now we've searched the tower from top to bottom," the Yeti added. She was 7 feet tall and covered in luxurious white fur, except for part of her back, which had been singed away by a fire that Kevin had saved her from. "DK and Elohi certainly aren't still in the tower." "So where else could he have gone?" Jonah wondered. "I know all of the regular rules of reality don't apply to the Upper Realm, but people can't just disappear, can they?" Kevin suddenly remembered something. They can't just disappear, but they can move on to another realm, especially somebody who's already as powerful as DK. "You already said that you didn't think DK would go back to the mundane world before he refined his skills and powers, Kevin." Jonah adjusted the bindings that held his leg in place. "That's right," Kevin agreed. "There is no way anybody as evil and egomaniacal as DK would pass up the chance to gain the full might of all of my 7 levels." Kevin leaned forward. "But there is another place that DK could have taken Elohi. He could have taken her to the lower realm." Jonah nodded. "If there's an upper realm, it makes sense that there's also a lower realm." The Yeti looked very confused. "I have heard rumors of this lower realm. It is a dark and dangerous place filled with all the worst parts of you humans." "That sounds like DK's idea of a vacation spot," Jonah added dryly. "No matter how dangerous it is," Kevin declared, "I have to follow DK there to save Elohi. She is the guardian of the White Tower. Without her, the upper realm will descend into mayhem and chaos." "Like it hasn't already," Jonah exclaimed. Already that interloper, whoever they are, is the one who started all the trouble here in the upper realm. Now we've got all sorts of problems. A sick guardian of the White Tower, earthquakes, even trash and litter everywhere. Don't forget, most of the population of the upper realm is wandering around as if they have the attention spans of goldfish, Kevin added. Everyone here except the interloper gained entrance to the upper realm through study, self-improvement, and achieving the correct mental state. They all should be geniuses, at least in their own areas. But I haven't met one who hasn't acted like they wouldn't need to take off their shoes to count to 20. Thanks for reminding me, Jonah grumbled. There had definitely been times when he had found himself distracted and acting in uncharacteristically childish ways, especially around the upper realm's large and beautiful butterflies. Many people had not taken Jonah, an accomplished ballet dancer, seriously. But Jonah's mastery of his art form required high levels of concentration, dedication, and discipline. Before Kevin had arrived, Jonah had been the most recent person to come to the upper realm. Kevin assumed that was why Jonah was less likely than all the other denizens to be distracted or engage in strange behavior. But now that Kevin thought about it, Jonah's distraction and wandering off had actually lessened during their time on the mountain. Perhaps it wasn't just being in the upper realm that caused the lack of mental discipline. But that was a problem Kevin would have to solve later. Right now he needed to follow DK to the lower realm in order to save Alohi and restore order to the upper realm. Don't think that you can pursue your dark doppelganger all by yourself, Kevin. Jonah stared at Kevin sternly. He's too powerful with all of his levels for you to take on by yourself. Kevin shrugged. Jonah, I always prefer to work as part of a team. I've done it many times in my adventures back in the mundane world. But who can I possibly take with me? I know that you are a brave and true friend, but you won't get far with your leg broken like that. Both men looked to the Yeti. The Yeti shook her head sadly. I am not one of you humans. I cannot leave the upper realm. It is not in my nature. Can't you fix my leg? Jonah begged Kevin. I have seen you do wonders with your herbal craft. I probably could if I had my satchel with me, but it was lost on the mountain during a flash flood. Kevin thought sadly of the satchel. He had to abandon it in order to save Jonah from the floodwaters. Kevin would do it again in a heartbeat, but he still regretted the loss of all of his herbal ingredients, especially since Jonah needed their healing properties so badly right now. The Yeti pointed to the steep face of the mountain. Is that where the flash flood occurred? She asked. Kevin looked up the mountain. He and Jonah had indeed climbed up that sheer face and had even built a makeshift tent to hang from the cliff, so they could sleep through an overnight storm. Beyond the face was a narrow canyon. That was where the flash flood had occurred. Kevin nodded to the Yeti. Yes, I do believe that's it. If your satchel was caught up in the floodwaters there, it would have washed down the mountain back onto this plain, she informed Kevin. Then maybe you still can get it back, Jonah exclaimed. But then another thought occurred to him which lessened his excitement. Except that it could be anywhere along the path of the water. It could take us days to search the entire area. It could be worse than that, the Yeti added. If it was a powerful flood, your satchel could have been washed all the way into the sea of possibilities. She waved in the direction of the sparkling sea. Kevin had already had to risk its strange and treacherous waters in order to recover his satchel of herbal ingredients once. Maybe it's hopeless, Jonah sighed. Even if you can find your satchel, even if you can track DK into the lower realm, even if you can defeat him and rescue Alohi, there's still the problem of the interloper who has thrown the upper realm into disarray. Kevin, what's the point of going through all this effort when everything could fall apart again as long as the interloper is still here? The Yeti nodded sadly. We don't even know who the interloper is. Actually, Kevin began, I have a pretty good idea of exactly who the interloper is. Jonah and the Yeti both stared at him in surprise. But for now, let's focus on getting my satchel back and getting Jonah healed. I will probably also need my satchel once I save Alohi from DK. She was in bad shape and unconscious when I last saw her. So first things first." The Yeti stood with a sigh. "Then I guess we better start looking for that satchel. We've got a lot of ground to cover." Kevin smiled. "I have an idea about someone who might be able to help us with that, actually. Madam Yeti, do you have any idea if there are any vultures in the upper realm?" The Yeti and Jonah exchanged surprised glances. They had no idea what Kevin could possibly want a vulture for, but they both knew Kevin Williams well enough to know that whatever idea he had was probably a good one. An obsidian mirror used by Gwen Archer, Kevin's enemy from Chicago, unleashed DK, a dark doppelganger of Kevin. DK broke Jonah's leg and threw Kevin off the mountain. Kevin, with the help of a friendly Yeti, got Jonah off the mountain, but then DK kidnapped Alohi, the guardian of the White Tower of the Upper Realm, and took her to another plane of consciousness known as the Lower Realm. Kevin plans to pursue DK and save Alohi, but first, he must recover his satchel of herbal remedies so he can heal Jonah. At Kevin's request, the Yeti took her new friend into the closest vulture nest she could think of. Kevin's satchel of herbal remedies had been washed off the side of the mountain in a flash flood. It would take days to search the upper realm to try to find where it had wound up. If the satchel had been washed into the sea of possibilities, which surrounded the upper realm, finding it might even be impossible for just Kevin and his friends alone. That is why Kevin hoped to recruit the help of the local wildlife in the form of the vulture population. Kevin knew that vultures could cover large areas and had the best sense of smell of any bird. Although his satchel was carefully waterproof, the unique combination of ingredients inside should make it no problem for the vultures to sniff out. Kevin peered up into the tree. The vulture's nest appeared to be an untidy heap of twigs and sticks from down here. Kevin reached out with his mind and found that there was indeed a vulture currently in the nest. Kevin issued a respectful request for the vulture to come down and join them on the ground so that Kevin might explain his needs better. The vulture sent back his equivalent of an angry speech. It refused to join Kevin, refused to help him, and refused to communicate with him further. Kevin tried a firmer approach, which only got him an additional cussing out and the impression that the vulture had decided it couldn't help Kevin at all. Kevin was pondering what to do next when another earthquake struck the upper realm. Everything around them shuddered and shook as seismic vibrations tore through the earth. Kevin and the Yeti managed to keep their feet only with great difficulty. The tree the vulture had nested in broke with a crack. The nest fell apart and the vulture plummeted towards the ground. Kevin raced forward, still fighting to keep his balance, and managed to catch the vulture gently in his arms before it would have slammed into the heaving ground. The earthquake lasted only a minute. When everything was still and quiet again, Kevin gently set the vulture on its feet, but the vulture only flopped over again. Kevin worried that the vulture had somehow been injured in the fall or in the earthquake itself. But then Kevin saw that there was a set of plastic rings tangled around the vulture's feet, essentially binding them together. They were the kind of plastic rings usually found holding a six-pack of drink cans together. Shaking his head at the carelessness of some humans, Kevin sent waves of comfort and calmness to the vulture. Although it was still very cranky, the vulture held still and even refrained from issuing Kevin any more angry caws and screeches. Kevin pulled out his night dagger and carefully cut the plastic away from the vulture's feet. "There you go," Kevin said to the vulture aloud. "Now you should be able to walk and fly. I understand why you didn't come down from your nest before. I'm sorry that some human has been so careless with his trash." In its mind, the vulture grumbled some more. Kevin could sense that it was still reluctant to help him, feeling like no good ever came of humans and that humans were to blame for all the troubles in the upper realm. Yeti was also able to communicate telepathically with the rest of the animal kingdom. "I don't like all the trash and litter that's found its way into the upper realm," she told Kevin. "But I would have thought that vultures would be more open to these scavenging opportunities all this human garbage provides." The vulture gave a disdainful harumph. "Vultures get a bad reputation as scavengers," Kevin pointed out. but they're just living according to how they've evolved. Someone needs to take care of dead and rotting animals, and the vultures are very efficient and good at it. But dead animals are not the same as trash, especially when they're not food waste. The Yeti nodded, her sympathy for the large birds growing. That is true, she agreed. And human garbage poses a threat to wildlife in all kinds of ways, like the way that poor vulture got twisted up in those plastic rings. Kevin understood how the vulture felt. He promised that he was there to help put the upper realm to rights again. That meant bringing an end to not only the trash and litter that had somehow found its way into this level of consciousness, but also restoring stability and ending the earthquakes. The vulture gave itself a hearty shake. Kevin got the impression that this was the vulture equivalent of saying, "Well, why didn't you say so in the first place, silly?" Kevin sent the vulture a mental image of his satchel of herbal ingredients. The vulture understood immediately. It gave a great ungainly flap of its wings and launched itself into the air, giving a typical vulture call, which was more of a woof than any other typical bird noise. Soon there were dozens of vultures wheeling over their heads. The Yeti frowned. "Circling vultures over my head usually doesn't strike me as a good omen," she told Kevin dryly. "I know what you mean," Kevin agreed, "but in this case, this is the best omen I could hope for." The vultures took off in different directions, some along a dry riverbed leading from the mountain, some over the wide plains of the upper realm, and a few took off over the sea of possibilities. The vultures were as efficient in their search for Kevin's satchel as they were at disposing of roadkill. Within the hour, the vulture Kevin had originally communicated with returned to the White Tower where Kevin, Jonah, and the Yeti were waiting. With the vulture was a second, smaller vulture. Kevin could sense that this was a more junior vulture. But the bird had the youth and strength to fly the longest distances of any in the vulture flock. Kevin paid close attention to everything that the vultures communicated to him before sending them on their way with his thanks and additional promises that he would do everything he could to restore order to the upper realm and send it to rights again. "Well," Jonah demanded, "tell me what the vulture said. I don't have your gift with animals, Kevin." "The good news is that they were able to find my satchel of herbal ingredients," Kevin declared. Jonah gave a cheer but then paused. "You said that was the good news? Does that mean that there's also bad news?" "I'm afraid so," Kevin said. "My satchel was washed in the floods all the way from the mountain to the Sea of Possibilities. From there, it was swept far out to sea. That was probably because it is waterproofed and able to float easily. There have been many of my adventures where it has spent significant time underwater. I always make sure that my satchel can withstand almost anything and protect the precious herbal ingredients inside." "So it's just floating around in the middle of the Sea of Possibilities now?" Jonah wanted to know. "Not quite," Kevin replied. "It seems that trash and litter have become such a problem in the upper realm that an entire floating island of garbage has formed far out in the sea. This is where my satchel has been caught up. The island of garbage is due west of the White Tower," Kevin went on. "So at least it will be easy to navigate to." "Yeah, but navigate to using what?" Jonah wondered. "I haven't seen so much as a rowboat since I've gotten here to the upper realm." "That's part of the bad news," Kevin agreed. "I'll need a boat in order to cross the Sea of Possibilities and get to the island of garbage." The Yeti looked concerned. "I've heard that there are a lot of dangers in the Sea of Possibilities. Anything can happen." Kevin smiled. "Yes, I do believe that is part of the reason it is called the Sea of Possibilities. But I will have to risk its challenges, known and unknown, if I'm going to recover my satchel and heal Jonah's leg." "I'm all for that," Jonah exclaimed. "Where do we start?" "I guess I'll have to build a boat first," Kevin decided. "Build a boat?" a voice said behind them. "That sounds like fun." Kevin, Jonah, and the Yeti all turned to see many of the dim-witted denizens of the upper realm gathered behind them. They had obviously been listening in. "We want to help build the boat," a large woman who looked like a bodybuilder said. The others soon all took up her words as a chant. "We want to help build the boat. We want to help build the boat." Unfortunately, they didn't seem to have the attention span to even keep the chant going. It soon devolved into each one of them chanting their own version, everything from, "We want to help fill the float," to, "We punt and belt krill coats." Kevin's heart sank. It was going to be difficult enough to build a boat that was seaworthy enough for the tumultuous sea of possibilities. With every half-wit in the upper realm trying to help, it might be impossible. With the help of some new friends, a ballet dancer with a broken leg named Jonah, an amicable yeti, and a squadron of vultures, Kevin located his satchel. It had been washed out into the sea of possibilities and now was part of a floating island of garbage. To get to that island of trash, Kevin must first build the boat. But the strangely dim-witted denizens of the upper realm are proving to be more of an obstacle than a source of help. Although Kevin was sure most of the people that he had met in the upper realm couldn't find their heads if they used both hands, they still managed to make plenty of trouble, particularly when gathered in a sizable group. The 15 or so people had heard Kevin's intention to build himself a boat. All of them wanted to help. They started running around trying to gather supplies while also bumping into each other, stumbling over their own feet, and stopping to gape at one of the many large and beautiful butterflies that seemed to be everywhere in the upper realm. At the same time, they continued their chant of, "We want to help build the boat." But even this simple chant proved to be too complicated for some of them. The chant quickly morphed into variations of the idea, while some people were just reduced to shouting, "Boat! Boat!" over and over again. They're more likely to destroy any building materials they find than actually put them to any use, Kevin shook his head. Don't you think, Jonah? But Kevin's new friend, the ballet dancer Jonah, didn't reply. Kevin looked over to see Jonah had become fascinated by another one of the butterflies. The butterfly had settled on Jonah's splinted leg. DK had broken Jonah's leg out of pure spite before tossing Kevin off the highest peak in the upper realm. Kevin wanted to get his herbal remedies back, in part so he could heal his friend's leg and save Jonah's career as a dancer. But in this particular moment, Jonah seemed to have forgotten everything except watching the butterfly's wings slowly open and close. "Jonah! Jonah!" Kevin yelled, waving to get Jonah's attention. "How? What?" Jonah blinked his eyes and stared at Kevin dully. Kevin realized that Jonah had slipped into the odd state of distraction that most of the other people in the upper realm seemed to be suffering from. It was particularly strange because everyone in the upper realm, except for the interloper who had caused much disarray, had gotten there by pursuing the highest level of their own personal development. Kevin would have thought everyone here would be as sharp and focused as Kevin himself was, even if they had other areas of interest. "Never mind," Kevin told Jonah, seeing it was no use talking to his friend when he was in this state. "What is it about those butterflies that everybody finds so absorbing?" Kevin asked the Yeti. The Yeti shrugged. "Search me. I never even saw butterflies like that before a short while ago." She was 7 feet tall and covered in luxurious white hair except for on her back, where it was singed from a recent fire that Kevin had helped save her from. Kevin filed the information in the back of his mind for later. If all of his adventures had taught him anything, it was that one never knew when odd bits of information would come in handy. But for now, he turned his attention back to building the boat. "I think it will take too long to build a boat from scratch," Kevin told the Yeti. "But I think there's something in Elohie's chamber that we can use as a base." Kevin waved the Yeti to follow him into the White Tower. Once inside the tower, they climbed the spiral staircase to Elohie's chamber at the top. This was where the guardian of the White Tower of the Upper Realm had lived when she wasn't busy taking care of what other matters were required of her to keep the Upper Realm in good condition. It was a simple space. There was a straw mattress for a bed, a small table with 2 chairs, and a large wardrobe made of some strong but light wood. Glancing around, Kevin could see Elohie had kept no personal effects in this space. That made sense because nobody could bring anything of personal value into the Upper Realm. Even when Kevin had first arrived with his trusty satchel, he had found it was empty of its real value, his rare and precious herbal ingredients. Kevin had to pass the first of his Upper Realm trials in order to get the ingredients back. Kevin motioned to the wardrobe. "If I take the doors off that wardrobe, the rest of it will make a fine hull for a boat to get me to the island of garbage in the Sea of Possibilities. But without my level powers, it's too heavy for me to move on my own. Would you be willing to assist me, Madam Yeti?" The Yeti gave a playful curtsy even though she wasn't wearing a skirt, or anything other than her thick layer of fur which covered her from the top of her head to her furry toes. "It would be my pleasure, Mr. Williams," she answered. Without another word, she scooped up the entire wardrobe single-handedly and carried it out of the room. Pleased to have that problem solved so easily, Kevin turned his attention to Alohi's bed. He would need to rig some kind of sails for his little boat. The bed sheets on Alohi's mattress were the only thing in the upper realm he had seen so far that might do the job. As Kevin was stripping the bed, something tumbled out from under the pillow. He picked it up. Kevin's experience with antiquities enabled him to immediately identify it as a pre-colonial wooden carving from Polynesia. Kevin was further able to place it as coming from one of the Hawaiian Islands. That in and of itself would have been strange enough, but looking at it closer, Kevin saw that the carving indicated that this statue was of an important spiritual leader, and that it was unmistakably Alohi. Kevin stared in amazement as his brain put the pieces together. Alohi, as the keeper of the White Tower, was the guardian for the entire upper realm. She, more than anyone, had been adversely affected by the presence of the interloper who had somehow cheated their way into the upper realm without first achieving the correct mental state. But this statue told Kevin that Alohi herself had once lived in the mundane world and was therefore human. Alohi was at least a few hundred years old. But since the upper realm had existed since before the dawn of mankind, there must have been other guardians. Kevin realized that while guardians of the upper realm might hold their tenure for long periods of time, it must be possible for them to be replaced. It was additional information he filed away for further pondering once he had achieved his current goal of regaining his satchel. The beach of the Sea of Possibilities was abuzz with activity as groups of upper realm residents tried to put together boats of their own out of whatever they could find: driftwood, panels of corrugated tin, or even their own clothes. There was even a foolish attempt to build a boat out of nothing more than rocks. The Yeti had thoughtfully brought both the wardrobe and Jonah down to the beach. They were waiting for Kevin when he arrived with the sheets he would convert into sails. Kevin got down to the serious work of making the wardrobe seaworthy. He braided vines and strands of seaweed into strong rope while the Yeti fetched him a young tree that would serve as an excellent mast and poles for the boat. With a little prompting, Kevin was able to direct Jonah to weave new rope into the top and the bottom of the sheets so they could be tied to the mast. Jonah, as a ballet dancer, had excellent sewing skills from repairing costumes and ballet slipper ribbons. Kevin found several chunks of flint on the beach and turned them into primitive tools. With these, he shaped several pieces of driftwood into a bow and a stern for the wardrobe boat so that it would cut through the water more efficiently. He attached these with more rope and then carved himself an oar and a rudder to use in addition to the sails. When he was done, Kevin stepped back and looked at his little craft. It was a hodgepodge of materials, but Kevin thought it looked seaworthy enough. "What are you going to call your boat?" Jonah asked when Kevin was ready to set out. "Every boat or ship needs a name." "There's only one name I would use, that of my darling wife." Kevin picked up a sea cucumber from the beach and brought it down firmly on the bow. "I hereby name you the Lily." Unfortunately, this set off the other residents of the upper realm. Soon they were bashing sea cucumbers, sticks, and rocks against anything in sight, including each other, and shouting, "The Lily! The Lily!" Kevin looked around at the chaos and had to remind himself that these fools must all be under the influence of the interloper. No matter how silly or inane, they in the upper realm still deserved his help. "I'd better launch the good ship Lily before they get any worse," Kevin told Jonah and the Yeti. The Yeti helped Kevin push the little craft out past the breaking waves, and then she heaved him into the boat. Jonah sat on the beach with his broken leg and waved Kevin off with cries of, "Bon voyage, good luck, don't die." With nothing more than his little makeshift boat, a young vulture to guide him, and his stalwart belief in himself, Kevin set sail upon the sea of possibilities. Kevin's herbal satchel is now part of a floating island of garbage in the middle of the Sea of Possibilities. Kevin built himself a boat with the help of his new friends, a ballet dancer named Jonah and an amicable Yeti. Then he set sail for the island of garbage, not knowing all the perils the Sea of Possibilities had in store for him. The sun beat down on Kevin mercilessly. He had been unable to bring water or any other supplies with him. He knew any extra supplies might be too much of a burden for his makeshift boat. Kevin couldn't even stay in the shade of the sails because he wanted to also paddle with the oar to make progress as quickly as possible. Kevin knew that the island of garbage lay directly west of the White Tower of the Upper Realm. For a while, he was able to keep the White Tower at his back and plot a steady course forward. But once the tower and all signs of land dipped below the horizon, Kevin had only the young vulture soaring on the currents above to guide him. Kevin tried to communicate with the young vulture to get some kind of sense of how far the island of garbage was, or how long it would take to get there. However, the young vulture had no sense of time or distance in human terms. It couldn't even identify any upcoming dangers Kevin's boat, which Kevin had christened the Lily, might encounter. The perils of the open sea were much different for those on the water than they were for creatures flying over it. After a while, Kevin spotted spurts of sea foam dashing high into the air ahead. At first, he thought it might be from the blowhole of his friend the whale who had helped Kevin recover his herbal satchel the first time. But soon, Kevin realized that the sea foam was coming in a constant line across the horizon. It was spread out along far too great a distance to be from a whale, or even a whole pod of whales. Not until he was nearly upon it did Kevin realize that this was a dangerous coral reef. It lurked just below the surface of the water and created the churn in the waves that sent up bouts of sea foam. Kevin knew his little boat would never survive an encounter with the sharp coral. If the boat wrecked, Kevin would be stranded on the coral reef without any supplies or hope of rescue. He must find a way to navigate his boat through the hidden obstacles just below the surface of the water. Kevin lowered the Lily's sails and armed himself with the oar. He would have to be strong and take things slow to steer the ungainly little craft through the reef to safety. But the currents were not in his favor. They propelled the Lily toward the reef faster than ever. Kevin dashed to the front of the boat as the first set of coral neared. He struck out with his oar, steering the boat away from the underwater obstacle. This was an old coral reef, as strong as stone and as sharp as knives. Kevin couldn't have hurt it with his carved wooden oar if he had wanted to. The sea foam was coming quicker now. Kevin couldn't even see the end of it from his current position. He focused on just getting through the next few feet at a time. He struck out to the left and the right, wending the little boat a serpentine path through the coral. But then he found himself in a cul-de-sac of sorts. With reefs surrounding him on three sides, he tried to paddle backwards, but the strong current continued to push the Lily forward. Kevin increased the speed of his paddling. If he had still had his levels, this would have been a piece of cake. But Kevin had lost his levels when he entered the upper realm. He had to make do with his ordinary strength and abilities. The mighty effort had Kevin sweating profusely as he finally backed his boat out of the cul-de-sac reef. He steered his boat safely around, paddling lengthwise through the reef and looking for a clear place to exit. The current continued to push him forward, though. It shoved the Lily broadside toward a tower of coral that actually breached the surface of the water. Kevin struck out with all his might, punting the Lily away from the sharp coral. The paddle in his hand cracked in two, but Kevin's last effort had been enough to push his boat out of the reef and into clear water. Kevin sank to the floor of the boat. He was covered in sweat and dying of thirst. The sun continued to beat down relentlessly. Kevin had only meant to take a short rest, but the dehydration and exhaustion sent him into unconsciousness. Kevin found himself floating in still darkness. The darkness gradually resolved itself until Kevin realized that he was looking down at the home he shared with his darling Lily and their friends, their pets, and with Dorothy, Alan, and Susan in the suburbs of Chicago. When he had lost the battle with his evil doppelganger, DK, Kevin had experienced terrible visions of DK taking over Kevin's life back in Chicago and Hollywood. But this time, Kevin only felt a warm sense of love and hope. DK was also nowhere in sight. The vision seemed to zoom in. Kevin found himself looking down at the spare room he and Lily were turning into a nursery for the twins Lily was currently pregnant with. The walls were painted cheerful colors, and there were two of everything, one for their daughter and one for their son. Lily was putting away baby supplies and humming to herself. She was wearing one of her power suits tailored for her maternity. Lily wore its authority with perfect confidence. Kevin could see Lily was blooming in her role as the recently elected mayor of Chicago, and motherhood made his beautiful wife positively glow. Kevin's heart swelled with joy just to see her looking so happy and healthy. Lily paused in her work to stroke her belly lovingly as the babies kicked inside her. "You two kids are getting strong," she said with a smile. "You're going to be just like your dad. He loves us so much. Wherever he is, I'm sure he can't wait to get back to us. And I can't wait for you to meet him and find out what an amazing, brilliant, brave man your father is." Kevin missed Lily and their unborn children so much that it was a physical ache. He tried to reach out to his darling Lily to let her know that he was nearby and thinking of them all. But just as he did, something pulled him back. Kevin felt the vision slipping away from him as he landed back in his body in his little boat with a thud. Kevin's return to consciousness was less than pleasant. His head pounded and his tongue felt furry. He could feel that he was getting a sunburn on all of his exposed skin. He reached out with his mind to the young vulture still circling overhead, hoping it could give him an update on how far the island of garbage was from Kevin now. But instead of responding, the young vulture veered away back toward the upper realm without any further communication with Kevin. Kevin stared, astounded. The vulture was his last hope of finding the island of garbage where his satchel of herbal ingredients was. He was now completely alone, without an oar, unable to navigate, and dying of thirst. Before he could give in to despair, a single drop of water hit his lips. This would not have been remarkable given the fact that he was in the middle of an entire sea made up of nothing but water, except this water was fresh. In his dismay over the vulture's abandonment, Kevin had not even noticed the rain clouds gathering overhead. The clouds opened and a gentle rain poured down over Kevin, cooling his sunburned skin and filling his mouth with fresh, sweet rainwater. Kevin laughed with delight. He spread water over his body to cool it and gulped down as much as he could before arranging a corner of his sail to collect more. He instantly felt his strength and his resolve coming back to him. But Kevin's blessing quickly became his curse. The gentle rain turned into a storm and then a furious gale. Rain poured down in buckets as thunder cracked the sky. The waves heaved the little boat up and down, nearly capsizing it with every swell. Kevin clung to the rudder, steering the little boat up each mountainous wave and then keeping it pointed straight down the other side so the boat wouldn't roll over. At the bottom of every wave, the backsplash nearly flooded the little craft. Kevin did his best to bail the water back out with one hand as he continued to steer. The storm went on for hours. Kevin lost all sense of direction and time. His only focus was the next wave, the next swell, and keeping his hand firmly on the rudder. If his concentration broke for only a moment, his little boat would be swamped, and Kevin would be lost. But no storm can last forever, and this one eventually blew itself out. Soggy and dazed, Kevin stood at the bow of the good ship Lily and took stock of what he could. To his amazement, he was facing the setting sun. Good luck and Kevin's own sense of direction had kept him sailing in the right direction even in the fury of the storm. Even better, Kevin spotted a dark smudge on the horizon. At first he thought it might be a landmass, but a momentary shift in the wind direction brought the thick stench of garbage to Kevin's nose. He had found the island of garbage where his satchel of herbal ingredients had washed up at last. Kevin raised as much of the boat's sails as he could and sped toward the floating island. It wasn't a real island. It was only a floating mass of tangled trash and litter. The mass slowly revolved in the water, propelled by some force that Kevin couldn't yet discern. For right now, that didn't matter, because Kevin just spotted the worst danger he had yet to face in the Sea of Possibilities, already standing on the island. It was his old enemy, Gwen Archer, and he could tell from her movements that she was searching for something frantically. Kevin knew in his heart that Gwen was looking for his satchel. If Gwen found the satchel before Kevin did, all of Kevin's plans for saving the upper realm would be for naught. With the help of some new friends, a ballet dancer named Jonah, an amicable Yeti, and a squadron of vultures, Kevin built a boat and crossed the Sea of Possibilities to a floating island of garbage in order to recover his satchel. But when he arrived, Kevin found Gwen was already there. Kevin knew there was no time to lose. If Gwen found his satchel first, Kevin would never be able to heal his friend Jonah's broken leg, pursue his dark doppelganger DK to the lower realm, or save Alohi, the guardian of the White Tower of the Upper Realm. Kevin ran his improvised boat, which he had named the Lily after his darling wife, aground on the island of trash. As Kevin stepped off the boat, he realized the floating island of trash was actually rotating, propelled by the hidden currents of the Sea of Possibilities. Kevin tried to race across the island to where Gwen was poking through piles of garbage and other junk. But he found the island wasn't as solid as it had appeared to be from afar. It wasn't a real island at all. Instead, it was a floating mass of every kind of trash and litter that had tangled and cemented itself together over time. Rather than being vaguely circular, it was shaped more like a donut. From here, Kevin could see the center was actually hollow, where a whirlpool quickly sucked down any bits that broke away to the bottom of the Sea of Possibilities. Kevin understood this whirlpool was what caused the donut-shaped island to rotate. Kevin picked his way carefully toward Gwen. Not only did he need to be stealthy and not alert her to his presence, but the island itself posed many dangers. It would be easy for Kevin to cut himself on rusty pieces of metal, get tangled in old barbed wire, or even put a foot straight through the island itself. Gwen continued to pick through the trash, muttering to herself, "Where the hell is that stupid satchel? I know it has to be here. I have to find it. I need what's in there." Even without his levels, Kevin's natural athleticism and excellent reflexes honed through his study of martial arts allowed him to get quite close to Gwen. He was about to lunge for her when she suddenly exclaimed, "Aha!" and stooped down. Kevin's heart sank. Had she found his satchel already? But instead, Gwen stood and turned toward him in one smooth motion. She threw something directly at Kevin's head. Kevin had a split second to see it was an old axe head, rusted but still razor sharp. He dove out of the way, but Kevin felt the axe pass by his face, missing it by less than an inch. Kevin crashed into a tangle of 50-gallon drums. "I should have known you would have come looking for that precious satchel of yours," Gwen hissed as she picked her way toward Kevin. She had murder in her eyes. "I should have known your act on the mountaintop was a trick," Kevin replied as he got to his feet. "You made me think looking into that obsidian mirror would give me my levels back. Instead, it unleashed a monster." Gwen threw back her head and laughed. "It's never too easy to take a good look at yourself in the mirror, is it, Kevin?" "My dark doppelganger might look like me, He might even have all 7 of my levels, but he is not me at all, Kevin declared. You're right, Kevin, Gwen sneered. DK is better than you are. He's stronger, more powerful, and far, far more ruthless than you'll ever be. That's why you have no hope of defeating him. There's always hope, Kevin declared. I'll never give up trying to stop DK and save Alohi in the upper realm. Gwen gave an evil grin. You're never even going to get the chance. Now that you don't have your levels anymore and I do, I'll just kill you myself. Kevin's eyes narrowed with suspicion. How do you have any powers here in the upper realm? I can't believe Alohi would have given you the chance to earn them back the way she gave me, and you couldn't have kept them when you got here. Unless. Suddenly, it was all clear to Kevin. He pointed an accusing finger at Gwen. Just as I suspected. You're the interloper. Gwen rolled her eyes. He finally gets it. Give the man a prize. She scooped up another item, this time a broken 2x4 bristling with nails, and flung it at Kevin. Kevin grabbed the lid from a corroded trash can and used it as a shield. The lid deflected the 2x4, but the force of Gwen's level 3 powers caused it to shatter. Kevin started circling Gwen, looking for an opportunity to attack. She had levels and he had none. He could only win this fight with heart and brains, not power or speed. It would be best if he started with a distraction. You're the one who's caused the upper realm to fall into such chaos, Kevin accused her. You're the reason all this garbage is here, why earthquakes keep happening, why people go insane when they get back to the mundane world like that woman I met in the nursing home, Beatrice. You're even the reason Alohi fell ill. Wah, 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 Gwen jeered. Cry me a river. In fact, cry me a sea. She stomped her foot on a loose board. It sent a spray of salt water into Kevin's face. He got an arm up just in time to block it. Just tell me one thing, Kevin demanded. He backed up toward the whirlpool at the center of the island, luring Gwen into following him. How did you manage to get to the upper realm without first achieving the correct mental state? That should have been impossible. Gwen looked pleased. That was quite a trick, wasn't it? I wish I could take the credit for it, but it wasn't my idea. It was another old friend of yours. Then why didn't he come here himself? Kevin wondered. Why send a low-level deputy like you? Gwen shrugged. He would have come here himself, but you know the rules. You can only come to the upper realm once. Kevin's quicksilver mind raced through all the possibilities and discovered there was only one person who could have helped Gwen. It was Vincent Reeves, wasn't it? He had been to the upper realm before, but then he became so twisted and perverse after he lost his levels. He'd be happy to make sure no one else could ever achieve their fully refined powers here. I always did think you weren't as stupid as you look, Kevin Williams. Gwen smirked. Back in Chicago when I was still running my real estate business, I thought that you were... She never finished the thought. Kevin grabbed a swath of old fishing nets and tossed them over Gwen's head. She howled in rage and fought against the net, but only became hopelessly entangled. Kevin turned from her. The net wouldn't hold Gwen forever. He had to find his satchel and get back to the good ship Lily as fast as possible. In fact, the net hardly held Gwen for long. She seized 2 handfuls of the already frayed net and tore it into 2. Then she lunged for Kevin, knocked him to the ground, and pinned him there. Nice try, Gwen sneered, but enough games. This is the end for you. She grabbed a piece of rebar. The broken tip was so sharp it glinted in the sunlight and then suddenly stopped glinting. Kevin looked past Gwen into the sky above. A familiar shape was blocking out the sun. Kevin pointed. What's that? Nice try, Kevin, but I'm not falling for one of your distractions again. You must think I'm some kind of idiot who... But just then, the shape, the one that Kevin recognized as belonging to the young vulture who had guided Kevin part of the way to the island, dive-bombed straight at Gwen's head. It struck in a flurry of beating wings, sharp talons, and pointed beaks. Vultures had evolved to rend and tear the flesh of their prey. The young vulture easily sliced into Gwen. Gwen screamed in pain and fury. She beat the bird away, lashing out with all her level 3 strength and abilities. She caught the young vulture by the tail and pulled it in to crush it to death. But Kevin smashed her over the head with a broken chair. Gwen pitched forward toward the center of the island. Her feet stumbled on the uneven ground. Kevin gave her a second blow with all his mundane strength. The chair shattered in his hand, but Gwen lost her footing entirely. She fell off the floating island of trash and directly into the whirlpool with a scream. Kevin watched in horror as the whirlpool whipped Gwen around and around. She kicked and struggled, but even with her level 3 ability, she couldn't help being sucked down and down, until she disappeared entirely. Kevin took a deep breath and hoped he'd finally seen the last of Gwen. If she really was gone, maybe the upper realm would begin to restore itself naturally. But in his private thoughts, Kevin believed it wouldn't be entirely back to normal until Alohi, as guardian of the White Tower, was restored to her rightful place. Kevin sent his thanks to the young vulture for its help and made sure it was okay. The vulture had lost a few tail feathers, but was otherwise fine. Kevin could sense the vulture's regret for abandoning him earlier when a storm had blown up while Kevin was crossing the Sea of Possibilities to the Island of Trash. The vulture was young and strong, but didn't have much experience with bad storms, and its courage had failed. Kevin scented waves of understanding. It had returned in time to save Kevin from Gwen's attack, and that what was most important. Now it could even help guide Kevin directly to his satchel. The satchel was very close to the last place Gwen had been looking. If Kevin had been even a few minutes earlier, she would have taken possession of it, and then Kevin really would have no way to save the upper realm. But as Kevin neared the satchel, his heart sank. The satchel was at the center of a huge tangle of deadly razor wire. How would he ever get free?